subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
Hearing the gentle voice of the young lady on the phone reminding Maen that there was no signal, Maen couldn't help but twitch his mouth and immediately guessed that Stephen must have gone into some cave and the signal was completely unavailable. Maen could only follow the address Stephen left before and prepare to go to MT Chimney. There are two roads from Laveridge Town to MT Chimney. One is the mountain trail and the other is the cable car. However, when Maen was about to take the cable car, he heard the staff say that the cable car was damaged and he could not go to MT Chimney today. When Maen arrived at the mountain trail, he saw Miss June Shah and the police stopping people who wanted to climb the mountain at the entrance of the mountain trail. In the center of the mountain trail, several huge rocks blocked the entrance of the mountain trail. When Maen saw this scene, he knew that both the cable car and the mountain trail were the work of the lava team, because they were trying to prevent people from going up the mountain. At the same time, because today is the Laveridge Town Festival, the number of unfamiliar faces suddenly increased, so the members of the lava team could also mix in and then gather a large group to go to MT Chimney together. Seeing that the normal way to enter MT Chimney was no longer possible, Maen could only lie on Jengar's back and let Jengar find a remote corner and carry Maen into MT Chimney. After entering MT Chimney, Maen found that the signal on the POC decks had completely disappeared, so he guessed that it was the lava team who blocked the signal of MT Chimney with a machine to prevent the people inside from asking for help. In the night, with the help of Jengar and his own dark power, Maen walked silently through the jungle. At this time, Maen suddenly heard footsteps and then quietly hid behind a tree. I say, why did Boss Tabitha ask us to patrol the forest? Isn't the road below destroyed? Stupid. Of course, it's because the meteorite plan is very important to our lava team. So Boss Tabitha specially prepared a secret weapon to prevent accidents from happening. What's secret weapon? I don't know either. It seems that only Executive Tabitha knows it. We ordinary members don't know it. Maen listened to the conversation between the two members of the lava team behind the tree, and a thoughtful expression appeared on his face. 012310525 full 1221041. Things were different from what he guessed. The target of the lava team was indeed the meteorite, and there was a secret weapon that Maen had never heard of, but unfortunately the two members of the lava team didn't know what the weapon was. Maen gently called Darkrai, and then Darkrai emerged from Maen's shadow and slowly raised his hand towards the members of the lava team. The two members of the lava team didn't know that danger was coming, and they were still chatting by themselves, without any vigilance. As the two continued to walk, they suddenly felt empty under their feet and fell down. At the moment of falling, the two found that something like a black hole appeared under their feet. Not long after the two fell into the black hole, they fell out of the black hole again, but they had fallen into a deep sleep. Maen took off the clothes of one of the team members and put them on. After all, the most important thing for Maen this time was to sneak in silently. If they went directly to Wushuang, they would make too much noise and easily attract the attention of the lava team. It would be troublesome if they were surrounded. After changing clothes, Maen tied the two of them together with a rope, then blocked their mouths with their own socks, and then found an empty corner and threw them over. As for whether the two were dead or alive, it depended on their own luck. Maen put on the hood of the lava team, and then pretended that nothing had happened and walked toward the entrance of the volcano. Along the way, Maen met many members of the lava team. Fortunately, with the cover of this set of clothes, Maen easily got through and arrived at the place he left before safely. But the reason why Maen looked a little solemn was that the place where Stephen left was at the entrance of a cave, and the entrance was now guarded by two members of the lava team. This means that Stephen may have met with the lava team and even had a fight. However, the specific situation may depend on asking the two guards at the entrance of the cave. The 8th update is completed. I have to be a best man tomorrow, so the update will be late, but it won't be delayed. Chapter 68 Infiltration and Combat. The reason why Maen was so concerned about the two guards in the cave was because of their clothes, which were obviously different from the two members of the magma team who were stuffed into the black hole before. Although the clothes were all red, they looked more formal and definitely not at the level of soldiers. For example, in addition to Giovanni as the leader and the executive under Kanto's rocket team, there were also various teams and captains. Jesse, James, and Meowth were the most junior members, but the backgrounds of the three were not bad, so they could often talk to Giovanni in the animation. Jesse's mother Miyamoto was the assistant of the leader of the rocket team, and the leader of the rocket team at that time was Giovanni's mother. With this relationship, Jesse would not encounter any trouble in the rocket team. James, needless to say, is a representative figure with a Maen in his family. Giovanni would not be in danger because of the relationship of James' family. City Meowth, a Pokemon that can speak 25, is absolutely rare. Although these two Pokemon are the most junior members on the surface, their actual status is definitely similar to that of the executive. After all, it is pure dreaming for a normal junior member of Team Rocket to talk to Giovanni. Unless you catch a legendary beast, you may be cannon fodder for Team Rocket for the rest of your life. The same reason applies to Team Magma, for example. The junior members on the periphery are absolute cannon fodder, and the real formal members are the backbone of Team Magma. Maen noticed that the two guards at the entrance of the cave had very sharp eyes, and their hands were always on the Pokeballs on their waists, in order to respond to possible attacks in the first place. If facing ordinary enemies, the two people's defense may be enough, but the three in Maen's shadow are not simple characters. Even if Marshadao does not take action, Jengar and Darkrai can silently kill the two. Jengar, Darkrai, Hypnosis, Maen said softly to the two Pokemon in the shadow. As Jengar and Darkrai quietly came behind the two members of the lava team, their eyes released a strange red light, and at the same time, ripples of normal began to be released around their bodies. The bodies of the two members of the lava team gradually stiffened, and then their eyes became dull, and the hands on the Pokeballs on their waists slowly dropped. Your names, numbers, and the purpose of guarding here. My name is Hugh, number RY 369, and the purpose of Protect here is to prevent outsiders from entering and disturbing Tabitha's plan, and to prevent the trainer in the cave from escaping. My name is Huomu, number RY 370. Maen hypnotized the two people, and after asking them, they had the same purpose except for their names and numbers. After skillfully stripping off the clothes of one of them, Maen threw the two people into an empty corner and then lowered the brim of his hat and walked into the cave. The passage of this cave continues to extend upwards. Although there are many forks in the middle, the end is naturally the entrance of the volcano of MT Chimney. The higher Maen walked, the more he could feel the temperature around him gradually rising. Although MT Chimney was always active, it was in dormant condition in most cases. This special environment also made the fire Pokemon at the mouth of the volcano particularly numerous. Just as Maen was exploring, a member of the lava team suddenly walked in front of him. He looked at Maen with a puzzled expression. Just as Maen was about to pretend to pass by like before, the member of the lava team on the opposite side spoke first. Stop! Are you a member of the lava team? Why you look so unfamiliar? What is your name and team number? My name is Huoyu, number RY 369. Hearing Maen's words, the member of the lava team on the opposite side showed a relaxed expression. Sui Jian waved his hand to indicate that he could leave. Just when Maen and a member of the magma team passed by each other, the Pokeball on the waist of the member of the magma team suddenly fell to the ground, and a Mad Cargo emerged from the Pokeball. The moment Mad Cargo appeared, he used Flamethrower on Maen. The column of flames instantly approached Maen's back, and was about to burn Maen into charcoal. At this critical moment, Jengar suddenly appeared and blocked Mad Cargo's attack with Protect. Why did you doubt me? Maen turned around and stood behind Jengar, asking curiously. The member of the magma team opposite heard what Maen said, laughed coldly, and then said, My name is Huashu, the captain of the magma team 3. Huyu is my younger brother, and you actually use his name, which is simply a trap. But I didn't expect that you actually have a Pokemon like Jengar. The member of the magma team, named Fire Tree, commanded the gym-level Mad Cargo to stand opposite Maen. Obviously, Maen could not move forward if he could not defeat Fire Tree. Maen also took out the Pokeball at this time and threw it on the ground. Zweilous figure 837 appeared in the cave, with two heads staring at Mad Cargo in front of them, while Jengar on the other side retreated to Maen's side and guarded Maen's surroundings vigilantly. The Fire Tree on the opposite side looked a little ugly. He could clearly see that Maen's Jengar and Zweilous were both gym level, and Maen's way of not letting Jengar and Zweilous join forces showed that the opponent did not take Fire Tree seriously at all. Even the reason why Maen sent Zweilous might be to take Fire Tree's Mad Cargo was used as a whetstone to accumulate combat experience. This arrogant attitude made Huoshu angry and happy at the same time, because the sound of the battle would definitely attract the attention of other people in Mountain. When his reinforcements arrived, that would be the death of the man in front of him. Now his goal was just to delay time. Huoshu thought of this and began to give orders to Mad Cargo in front of him. Mad Cargo Lava Plume. As Huoshu gave the order, Mad Cargo puffed up his body and then spit up thick black smoke in the direction of Zweilous. And before the smoke got close to Zweilous, the burning sensation contained in the smoke had already hit him. Chapter 69 Zweilous versus Mad Cargo. Maen had been mentally prepared for the resistance of Huoshu, and he did not hide the fact that he sent Zweilous to train Zweilous. After all, an enemy who cannot hold back is a good training target. As for whether he was worried about the arrival of other members of the Lava Team, Maen had asked Darkrai to hide the situation here. Although he could not hide the situation here forever, it was impossible for Huoshu to wait for his teammates in the short term. Huoshu's idea of holding on until his teammates arrived was just wishful thinking. From the time Huoshu foresight Maen's identity, the huge gap in strength had already determined Huoshu's fate. The view returned to the battle scene of Maen and Huoshu. As a fire skill, Lava Plume will not only interfere with the line of sight, but also cause damage from fire-type skills. Zweilous, Dragon Breath. Maen commanded calmly in the face of the incoming attack. As the Dragon-type's Dragon Breath collided with the incoming smoke, the entire cave was suddenly filled with a large amount of scorching steam, and some of the ground on the ground still had traces of burning. The moment Zweilous blocked Lava Plume, Zweilous rushed directly to Mad Cargo in front of him, braving the hot temperature in the air. Mad Cargo is a Pokémon with high defense, high long-range attack, and slow speed. If the two sides use skills from a distance in the cave, Zweilous will not have an advantage at all. But if it enters close combat, it is the field that the two-headed dragon is good at, which is why Maen wants Zweilous to use close combat. Mad Cargo, Flamethrower, stopped the two-headed dragon from approaching. On the other side, Huoshu, the captain of the Lava Team, naturally discovered Maen's thoughts. He knew the advantages and disadvantages of Mad Cargo very well, so he naturally wanted to stop Zweilous from approaching. In Huoshu's eyes, although Zweilous is powerful, he has always been extremely violent in character. He should not dodge Mad Cargo's attack, but will rush forward with rage. In this way, whether Zweilous is hit or Zweilous uses skills to block, it should be able to delay Zweilous' steps and achieve the purpose of delaying Zweilous. But then, the scene that shattered Huoshu happened. Zweilous faced Mad Cargo's Flamethrower and rushed straight at him as he thought, but Huoshu, who was originally planning to laugh, was dumbfounded. As Zweilous ran over, one of his heads began to gather dragon energy directly, and then a dragon pulse was spit out at Flamethrower. Seeing Zweilous use skills to block Flamethrower, Huoshu should be happy that his goal was achieved, but the problem is that although this Zweilous used skills, his body did not stop while using the skills, and he still rushed towards Mad Cargo at full speed. In Huoshu's eyes, the Zweilous on the opposite side was like a moving chariot normal, moving while aiming and firing back with his head as a weapon, as if the movement of the body and the release of skills were controlled together. However, Maen knew that the reason for this situation was that his Zweilous was too smart. Before, Maen had let Zweilous try to do two things at the same time, learn to release two skills at the same time. Although it did not succeed now, after practicing for this period of time, Zweilous can already control the body with one head and release skills with the other head. The benefits of doing this have just been demonstrated. Under the same strength, The opposite Mad Cargo was easily dragged to close combat by Ma on Zweilous. Mad Cargo hardened, seeing Zweilous approaching. Huoshu knew it was too late to release long-range attacks, so he could only hastily let Mad Cargo increase its defense to resist Zweilous' attack as much as possible, and then find a way to counterattack. As a light flashed on his body, Mad Cargo tightened his body in the shell, intending to resist Zweilous' attack with all his strength. Zweilous crunch. Zweilous' two mouths gathered the energy of the evil system at the same time, and then opened his mouth and bit Mad Cargo's body fiercely. The two mouths came to Mad Cargo's body one after another, accompanied by a tooth-grinding friction sound and the sound of objects cracking after the friction sound. Mad Cargo's body was instantly knocked out, and as Mad Cargo flew out, the scattered shell fragments in the air could be clearly seen. Even Mad Cargo, who used Harden, could not resist Zweilous' attack at all, and even the strongest shell on his body was bitten into pieces. Mad Cargo was lying on the ground, making a sound of pain, while Zweilous, the instigator, could not help but roar in victory. The expression on Huoshu's face, standing behind Mad Cargo, was very ugly. He did not expect that, even with the same strength, the results of the battle would be so different. Looking at Zweilous, who was still celebrating in front of him, Huoshu was terrified, gritted his teeth, and said fiercely to Mad Cargo, who was still able to fight, "Mad Cargo, shell smash and use Inferno." Although Mad Cargo was uncomfortable after being hurt by Zweilous, he still followed the order without hesitation, da-da-da, after hearing the command of Trainer. As Mad Cargo's body slowly emerged from the cracked shell, the color of Mad Cargo's body became more fiery red, and the temperature of his body became more terrifying. Mad Cargo looked in the direction of Zweilous and spit out a lot of flames from his mouth. And these flames spewed out as if they had their own consciousness, normal, and slowly surrounded Zweilous while flying towards him in the air, and then continued to shrink in. After doing all this, Mad Cargo slowly lay on the ground, breathing heavily, and his eyes became extremely tired. Shell Smash and Inferno's double hit had exhausted Mad Cargo's physical strength. But even though his body fell, his eyes were still fixed on the direction of Zweilous, waiting for Zweilous' response. Chapter 70. Meteorite that can awaken Groudon. The skill of Shell Smash in reality is different from that in the game, which can be used multiple times. In reality, when Pokemon uses the skill of Shell Smash, the effect is the same as in the game, which can enhance the attack and speed of Pokemon, but the disadvantage is that it will reduce defense. But the problem in reality is that when Pokemon uses Shell Smash, the body will really get out of the shell for a short time. Although a new shell will be generated soon after the shell is generated, the new shell is often very fragile. This situation leads to the fact that if Pokemon uses shelling continuously, it will cause great damage to the original body of Pokemon. Therefore, in most cases, most Pokemon who have learned the skill of Shell Smash will regard Shell Smash as a killer normal skill. So although the tactic of Transform Mega Sniper after shedding the shell like Cloyster in the game is also available in reality, the effect will definitely be greatly reduced, because there is no limit to 4 skills in real battles, and Cloyster, who loses the protection of the shell, will be easily targeted. However, when Maen saw the normal surging like a fire dragon and surrounding Zweilous, he also showed a surprised expression, because even if Maen stood at a distance, he could feel the power of the skill of Inferno. If Mad Cargo wanted to master Inferno, he could only learn it through the inherited skill. This proved that the strength of Mad Cargo's parents must be good. It seems that Tabitha has made a lot of contributions in the Magma team. Otherwise, it would be impossible to get such a high-quality Pokemon offspring. However, Maen was surprised but not panicked when facing Mad Cargo's attack. He commanded Zweilous, who was gradually surrounded by flames, "Zweilous, protect!" As the light film wrapped around Zweilous' body, Chinyu's flames also wrapped around Zweilous' body. On the other side, Tabitha looked at Zweilous and the flames nervously. This attack was a duel between spear and shield. Whether Inferno could break, protect was the biggest key. However, Tabitha was destined to be disappointed. Protect could be broken in the real world. One of the reasons was that the Pokemon using Protect did not have enough physical strength. In this case, although the Pokemon successfully used Protect, it might not be able to resist the attack of the other Pokemon 100%. Another reason was that the strength gap between the two Pokemon was too large. For example, Groudon used Precipice Blades to attack an ordinary Sandshrew that had learned Protect. Even if Sandshrew used it successfully, it would never be able to successfully block it because the gap between the two was too large. Therefore, the more physical strength a Pokemon has, the higher the effect and success rate of using Protect. Zweilous, under the daily high-resource cultivation of Maen, coupled with the innate talent of the quasi-god Pokemon, had previously been Magcargo's fight, didn't even give it the chance to breathe. The result was that under the attack of Inferno's fire, Zweilous was unscathed. After a roar, he shattered the flames surrounding him and stood proudly on the ground, then looked at the lava snails that came out of Shell Smash. Magcargo still stood there with his body supported, and behind him was a new shell that was produced after using Shell Smash. However, the new shell was soft and light, and it also had no ability to resist attacks. Zweilous, Draco Meteor, is over. For Magcargo, whose speed increased and defense decreased, Maen naturally used Draco Meteor, which had a considerable attack range and power, and Zweilous was using this move more and more skillfully. Amid the flying of Draco Meteor and Horseshoe's unwilling roar, Magcargo fell to the ground covered with wounds after a thick smoke, losing the ability to fight. Seeing Magcargo defeated, Horseshoe quickly took back Magcargo and then turned around to escape. But before he ran 2 steps, Horseshoe saw Gengar approaching him with a smirk. Seeing the situation of wolves in front and tigers behind, Horseshoe instinctively planned to say something to delay some time. You don't have to think about delaying time. When we were fighting, everything around was blocked by me. So the helper you've been expecting didn't hear the situation here at all. Before Horseshoe could speak, Maen, who had taken back the Dilophosaurus, shattered Horseshoe's last expectation with a devilish voice. With Horseshoe's mental breakdown and Gengar's eyes flashing red, Maen slowly spoke again. Now, please answer my questions well. Ignoring Horseshoe, who was lying on the side with a dull look and drooling, Maen continued to move forward while thinking about the information he had just interrogated. As for whether Horseshoe had become a fool, it was not under Maen's consideration. After all, for a captain-level figure like Horseshoe, Ma asked Gengar to increase the intensity of hypnosis. Whether high-intensity hypnosis would cause damage to Horseshoe's brain was not within Maen's consideration. After all, from what Horseshoe said after being hypnotized, Maen knew that Horseshoe had done a lot of evil things. Otherwise, the position of captain would not be so easy to obtain. For such a villain, Maen naturally had no habit of holding back, and directly let Gengar increase the transmission of mental power. If he had not become the Rainbow Warrior, he was worried about affecting the results of the trial. Maen would have dug a pit to bury Horseshoe directly. Unlike now, he just made the other party a fool and threw him there. As for whether Horseshoe can survive in the future, it is not Maen's problem. After all, Maen has saved Horseshoe's life, right? Thinking of this, Maen feels that he is really a good person. Compared with those evil people, he is too kind. Maen, who is shameless and self-praising, is also analyzing the information he got from Horseshoe before. Horseshoe, who is the captain, really knows more and more detailed information than the previous members of the Lava Team. Steven, who Maen was worried about before, and Normal, who was expected by the Lava Team, were not caught by the Lava Team. Instead, they defeated many people of the Lava Team until the Lava Team executive Tabitha took action to repel Steven. But they did not catch Steven, but let Steven escape successfully. And Tabitha did not capture Steven because the biggest purpose of the Lava Team coming to MT Chimney this time was naturally the meteorite mentioned by Maen before, because that meteorite is one of the key items to awaken Groudon. Chapter 71, Steven in Trouble in the Game. The meteorite appears in Meteor Falls, and in the animation, it appears in MT Chimney. However, the purpose of obtaining the meteorite is mostly to use the energy of the meteorite to restore the activity of volcano. Only a few generations of games mention the use of meteorite to wake up the sleeping Groudon. But the problem now is that the Hoenn region has long known the locations where Groudon and Kyogre are sleeping, and MT Chimney is definitely not the place where Groudon is sleeping. And the Magma team wants to take the meteorite away and then use it when they go to the location where Groudon is sleeping. The first person who got the clue of the meteorite when it fell was not the local residents, nor Steven, who came after hearing the news. It was Professor Cosmo, who had been studying on the mountain. Professor Cosmo is a professor who studies meteorites in the Pokemon world, and when this meteorite appeared, it was Professor Cosmo who discovered it first. This Solence is a tough guy in the Pokemon games and animations. In addition to this meteorite, Professor Cosmo also investigated that meteorite can transform into the form of Deoxys and studied Mega Evolution in meteor falls with Friend from the Kalos region. Professor Cosmo's father, Sparky, gave Professor Cosmo a Bagon, and this Professor Cosmo actually cultivated Bagon into Salamence, and then exchanged Salamence with his friends for Solrock, just because the evolved Salamence did not look like meteorite. Damn, the resources required to cultivate a quasi-god Pokemon to perfection are already countless. And this Professor Cosmo actually thought that Salamence did not look like meteorite, so he ignored the resources invested before and directly exchanged for Solrock. Maen wanted to say that if there really is such a big guy, please give him more. If he wants Solrock, he will definitely go through mountains and rivers to get it for him. After Professor Cosmo discovered meteorite, he began to make instruments and began to study in the mountains. He eventually found that the energy contained in meteorite was very amazing, and the manifestation of this energy was closer to the energy of fire type. During the research, Solence not only discovered that meteorite had an amazing high-temperature reaction once, but even destroyed the instruments once. Professor Cosmo suspected that this meteorite might be related to Groudon. After discovering that the research might be related to Groudon, Professor Cosmo was not scared away, but became more devoted to studying meteorite 24 hours a day. But the Magma team, which had footprints all over the Hoenn region, naturally received the news of meteorite, and after investigating Professor Cosmo, they discovered the secret of meteorite. As the Magma team intended to awaken Groudon and cover the Pokemon world with land, this meteorite was a must-have item. Soon, Professor Cosmo was found by the Magma team. Although Professor Cosmo was a researcher, he was not bad at being alert. Moreover, as a professor of the Alliance, he also knew some news about the Magma team. So before the Magma team arrived, Professor Cosmo took meteorite away and hid in MT Chimney. After discovering that Professor Cosmo was hiding in MT Chimney, the team leader Tabitha Executive led the team to block the entire MT Chimney and blew up the road to the mountain. As the search circle continued to shrink, the Magma team was getting closer and closer to the goal of catching Professor Cosmo. But Steven appeared in the middle. Steven's strength was no less than the ordinary trainer that the Magma team had captured on the mountain before. He directly repelled the attacking Magma team. If it weren't for Executive Tabitha's action, I'm afraid he would have escaped the encirclement of the Magma team. The current situation is that the Magma team, Steven, and Professor Cosmo are all in MT Chimney, but now there's also Maen who has entered the chaos. At this time, Maen suddenly heard the sound of fighting above his head. Maen, who had already guessed, quickly moved towards the direction of the volcano mouth. When Maen arrived at the volcano mouth, he found that Steven was commanding Metagross, Agron, Skarmory, and the Earth Dolls to fight on a platform. The rival in the battle was Executive Tabitha of the Lava team. At the same time, Maen also found Professor Cosmo standing behind Steven with a device equipped with meteorite. Maen quickly guessed that Steven might have met with the hiding Professor Cosmo, and at the same time understood the purpose of the Lava team, and decided to take the task of protecting the meteorite cloth. Please give me flowers, but Steven is obviously at a disadvantage now. Not only because the Lava team has more people, but the biggest reason is the two elite Camerups in front of Executive Shuetsuin. As the executive of the Magma team, Tabitha naturally has elite level Pokemon. So even if Steven's Metagross has reached the elite level, The disadvantage in attributes and the gap in overall strength still makes Steven's defense more and more difficult. Maen also sighed at Steven's strength. It was not only because of the rich resources, but also because Steven's own talent was top-notch. Otherwise, it would be impossible to have an elite-level Metagross at this age, and other Pokémon had basically reached the quasi-elite level. Maen guessed that Steven would become one of the Elite Four in 1 to 2 years at most, and then he would immediately become the champion of Hoenn. However, even if Steven's talent is amazing in the future, the executive of the rival Magma team is still not rival now. Camerupt, Flamethrower together, get rid of the kid on the opposite side. Tabitha's gloomy voice sounded, and at the same time directed Camerupt to attack in the direction of Steven. As the Camel Mountain behind, Camerupt made a sound and sprayed white steam. 2 flames as thick as big trees spewed out. Steven immediately ordered his Pokémon to defend, with Metagross as the big head, and other Pokémon as the auxiliary to release skills together to block the flamethrower of the 2 Camerupts. But Metagross was still able to resist, but Steven's other Pokémon were a little struggling. After all, the gap between main level and non-main level Pokémon was too big. Seeing Steven being suppressed more and more by Flamethrower, and at the same time, the members of the Magma team next to him began to join the battle. Professor Cosmo, standing behind Steven, said, "Mr. Steven, run. You have done enough. I will use Meteorite to buy you a chance to escape." After that, Professor Cosmo raised the device with Meteorite high and shouted to the Magma team on the opposite side to stop. Chapter 72 Rescue Steven. Professor Cosmo held up the device containing the meteorite and shouted to Executive Horseshoe of the opposite lava team to stop. Otherwise, he planned to throw the meteorite into the lava pool at the mouth of the volcano. Everyone present heard Professor Cosmo's words, including Maen, who was hiding at the entrance of the cave. However, Professor Cosmo's research was okay, but he had no idea about this kind of fight. His words not only made Maen and Steven sigh helplessly, but also made Tabitha on the opposite side laugh. "Professor Cosmo, you have been studying so much that your head is stupid. Do you think I will stop now? As for the meteorite, you can throw it into the lava pool if you want. Anyway, we also brought a salvage device. It just takes a little more time." Horseshoe's tone was full of disdain and ridicule, and he ordered Camerupt to increase the intensity of the attack after 597. Since the Magma team blocked MT Chimney and then shrunk to hunt down Trainer on the mountain, there were only 2 possible outcomes for this matter. Either the Magma team got the meteorite, or the Magma team was defeated. Professor Cosmo's method of using the meteorite to stop the fight was fine when the Magma team just entered the mountain, but the current situation is that the Magma team has offended the Alliance and is also hunting down Daigo. The Magma team must be aware of Steven's identity. Since they dared to hunt down Steven, they were ready to kill him. The Magma team didn't care about Duin's attitude afterwards. After all, this was Groudon's meteorite, and the Magma team would never give up even if they offended Duin. Everyone present knew that this fight was a life-and-death struggle. So when they heard Professor Cosmo's words, everyone's expressions were so strange. Steven's disadvantage was already somewhat obvious. Although he was kind by nature, the meteorite was obviously not safe in the current situation, so Steven planned to use the life-saving props left at home. At this moment, 2 shadow balls flew directly from a distance and hit the 2 eruptions. The sudden attack made Camerupt tilt his body, interrupting the release of the flamethrower, and Steven took the opportunity to take a breath. Everyone looked towards the cave entrance and saw Maen standing there in the uniform of the lava team, with Jengar and Zweilous beside him. Steven recognized Maen's face under the uniform of the lava team at a glance, and his expression instantly became pleasantly surprised. On the other side, the expression on the face of Tabitha Executive was a little gloomy. From the fact that Maen was wearing the uniform of the lava team, it was known that the lava team members on guard in the cave were wiped out, and there was no way to stop Maen from entering the entrance of the volcano. A bunch of trash let the rats get in so easily, but forget it, rats are rats after all, and can't change anything. Tabitha's tone was still extremely gloomy. Maen also took the opportunity to come to Steven, and the Pokémon of both sides also gathered together. "Maen, I knew you would definitely find this place. After all, The Magma team made too much noise, and the Alliance probably got the news. We just need to hold them back. Since Maen entered the chimney, plus the time when the Magma team blocked it before, there's been no news from MT Chimney for such a long time, and the Alliance must have some doubts. After all, Professor Cosmo is an officially certified professor of the Alliance. The Alliance will pay special attention to every senior researcher, and Professor Cosmo has been out of contact for so long. The Alliance's investigators will arrive soon. The Magma team standing opposite Maen naturally knew about this situation, especially Tabitha, whose gloomy expression became deeper and deeper, and then she slowly said, "Forget it. Let's quickly deal with you mice. I've played enough cat and mouse games." After that, Tabitha took out the Pokeball from her waist again and threw out. A duck-billed Charmander, duck-billed PSY. Here we still have the habit of calling Charmander. Appeared from the Pokeball, and the aura emanating from it was another elite level one. Seeing the appearance of the duck-billed Charmander, Maen and Steven also showed serious expressions on their faces. The suppression power of 3 elite-level Pokemon was really amazing. The rest of the members of the Lava team go to guard the cave entrance and the passage. I will deal with these 2 little ghosts. Don't let the rats get in again. Tabitha ordered the other members of the Lava team to leave and protect the cave entrance. First, to prevent others from sneaking in like Maen, and second, to further reduce the possibility of Maen and Steven escaping. In Tabitha's opinion, with 3 elite-level Pokemon, it is impossible for her to lose to Maen and the other 2. On the contrary, it is not easy for her to attack with all her strength with the other team members present. Then Tabitha replaced one of the main attackers with a duck-billed Charmander, leaving a Camerupt standing beside her, in order to prevent Maen's sneak attack. As an executive, Tabitha obviously knew that Maen might be a trainer who was good at Ghost when she saw Maen's Jengar, and Ghost trainers are most famous for their weird attack methods. Tabitha naturally would not give Maen a second chance to use Shadow Ball to sneak attack. Maen saw Tabitha's arrangement and could only sigh helplessly in his heart, and then called out Darkrai in the shadow, intending to resist Tabitha's attack with all his strength. Darkray's injuries have not fully recovered, but he can still deal with Tabitha's trump card 0.2 duck-billed Fire Dragon. The key to the problem lies in the other 2 elite-level Camerupts, and Maen was still thinking about the information he got from the previous interrogation. Executive Tabitha came to him this time with a secret weapon. This secret weapon allowed the Lava team to appear here regardless of everything, and it was definitely not just because of a duck-billed Fire Dragon, so the inner vigilance was still not reduced. But now Maen has no time to explore the truth of the secret weapon himself, and can only fight Tabitha on the opposite side with all his strength. Darkrai. As an executive, Tabitha naturally knew Darkrai. She showed a surprised expression for the first time, but then became more gloomy. Chapter 73, The Dark Line. Executive Tabitha instinctively planned to retreat after seeing that Maen actually had Darkrai. After all, after staying in the Magma team for so long and being able to become an executive under the pursuit of the Alliance, Tabitha definitely has the ability to save her life. After all, Maen had seen the power of these mythical beasts and phantom Pokemon, especially Darkray's reputation. So Tabitha's first reaction was to run away. But then Tabitha noticed that Darkray's strength was a bit wrong. He was only at the middle level of the elite level, at the same stage as his own Charmeleon. Tabitha immediately judged that Darkrai was injured, so she gave up the idea of escaping. In Tabitha's opinion, Charmeleon and Darkrai were a pair, and his remaining 2 Camerupts could completely deal with the Pokemon on Maen and Steven's side. Boy, you and Tiger were almost here. Tabitha's tone was full of rage. However, even though Darkrai was injured, Tabitha knew that Maen's identity was definitely not simple. After all, he knew Steven and had a Pokemon like Darkrai. Tabitha didn't think that Maen had no backers behind him. But Tabitha was in a dilemma now, so she could only cut the grass and root it out. Otherwise, with the talents of Maen and Steven, Tabitha felt that she would not have to think about living a good life in the second half of her life after escaping. Dark Void, Darkrai, don't even think about it. Charmeleon, use the big word Flame Blast. Maen, who wanted to take the initiative, was discovered by Tabitha and immediately ordered Charmeleon to launch a return. Metagross Psychic attacked the duck-billed fire dragon. Camerupt blocked the attack. Darkrai gathered his hands together and then threw a baseball-sized black energy ball at the duck-billed fire dragon. And the duck-billed fire dragon puffed up its mouth, and then flames spewed out of its mouth, gathering into a large in the air, and confronted the flying dark void in the air. The sphere composed of dark void instantly spread when it touched the flame, and turned into a huge black sphere that wrapped the flames of the large word flame explosion in it. While the duck-billed fire dragon was attacking, Steven also quickly commanded Metagross to sneak attack, and the white laser was shot at the duck-billed fire dragon. But Tabitha was prepared, and Camerupt spit out fire to block Metagross's psychic. Maen and Steven's first joint attack was blocked by Tabitha. At this time, in the blind spot of Tabitha's vision, Jengar's figure appeared, and then a shadow ball was thrown at Tabitha, although Tabitha couldn't see it. Another Camerupt that had been alert beside her jumped up instantly, condensed a layer of light film in front of her, and blocked the attack of Shadow Ball. Boy, do you think I didn't expect you to sneak attack? You are so naive. Tabitha saw Camerupt blocking Jengar's sneak attack, and her expression on her face was very disdainful. Camerupt Flamethrower. At this moment, Camerupt, who had just blocked Metagross, suddenly spit out flames and attacked Steven and Maen. Steven's Aggron and the Earth Doll hurried over to resist, but because of the huge gap in strength, they were directly pierced by the flames and fell to the ground and lost consciousness. Not only did their own trick fail to win, but they also lost 2 Pokémon. The situation became worse for Maen and Steven. Steven took back the Aggron and the Earth Doll with a somewhat ugly look on his face, and then asked Maen with his eyes if he had any plans. After all, Maen is the one who has the most ideas around Steven, and the current situation requires Maen to think of a solution. Maen is also thinking about countermeasures quickly in his mind. The current situation is that they have Darkrai, Jengar, Zweilous, and Steven's Metagross and Skarmory. Among Steven's Pokémon, Metagross still has some combat capabilities, but the attribute restraint problem still limits Metagross's performance. As for Skarmory, it can only be used as a mobile Pokémon, and Tabitha's 3 elite Pokémon, except for 2 Camerupts that are slightly injured, Charmeleon is still the best contest condition. From the scene, Maen is at an absolute disadvantage, and Marshadao and Maren's Shadow will not take action. Although it likes Maen very much, it cannot help Maen fight because these are also the trials that the Rainbow Warrior should endure. Unless Maen is really in danger of his life, Marshadao will save Maren's life. The rest of Song can depend on Maen himself. Thinking of this, Maen knew that he had to reveal all his cards. Maen slowly closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, his body had begun to release black mist, and these mists seemed to have life normal and turned into a rope-like shape in the air normal. One end of the rope made of these mists came from Maen himself, and the other end was connected to the backs of Darkrai, Jengar, and Zweilous. After one end of the rope touched the 3 Pokémon, the 3 Pokémon began to be surrounded by black mist, and the power in their bodies was also partially increased. This was the method that Maen came up with when he saw Sabrina using Psychic to improve the strength of Pokémon at the Saffron Gym. Although Maen also used Dark Power to strengthen Pokémon at that time, most of the energy leaked out. It was not as accurate as Sabrina in strengthening Pokémon to the maximum extent. 0, 1, 2, 3, 1, 0, 5, 2, 5, Philo 1, 2, 2, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1. So Maen began to study his own unique strengthening method. In the psychic training method given by Sabrina's father, Maen noticed the strengthening means in it, and then verified and studied it with his own dark power, and then he developed his own strengthening method. Tabitha also looked a little ugly when she saw the abnormality on Maen's side. He didn't expect Maen to be a special ability user. Although he couldn't figure out Maen's ability, he could still feel the strengthening momentum after the 3 rope-like things touched Pokémon. Tabitha, who didn't want to delay any longer, planned to attack with all his strength. He had already judged that Maen and Steven's the number of Pokémon has increased, so you can relax a little on your own defense and let your 3 Pokémon fight with all their strength. Chapter 74. Fighting the Magma Team, Executive Tabitha, Camerupt, Sunny Day. Tabitha commanded Camerupt beside her. Camerupt heard Tabitha's command and did not hesitate. The energy of the fire type lingered all over his body. Then he spit up a red energy ball from the hump behind him and hit soaring in the sky. The energy ball stayed in the air, like a small sun normal hanging in the air at the mouth of the volcano, constantly sprinkling fire energy in the air. Under the influence of Sunny Day, the momentum of Charmeleon and the other Camerupt became more amazing. Coupled with the natural blessing of the mouth of the volcano for fire Pokemon, the power of Charmeleon and Camerupt's next attack will probably be even more amazing. After Camerupt finished the field skills, the Pokemon on Maen's side also moved. Gengar threw Shadow Ball directly at the Duck-billed Charmander, but the Duck-billed Charmander didn't take Gengar's attack seriously at all. After all, one of them was a gym level close to the quasi-elite level, and the other was a genuine elite level. The difference in strength between the two gave the Duck-billed Charmander the confidence to ignore it. The Duck-billed Charmander smashed the flying Shadow Ball with a wave of his hand, and then showed a disdainful expression to Gengar. But Gengar still kept a sly smile on his face. With its wisdom, it certainly knew that this attack would not be able to cause damage to the Duck-billed Charmander. But its original purpose was not this at this time. The Duck-billed Charmander saw Gengar's expression and reacted, and hurriedly turned his head to look in the direction of Darkrai. But Darkrai didn't know when he had come to the front of the Duck-billed Charmander, and his eyes released red light. The red light turned into ripples and passed through the Duck-billed Charmander's body. Under the influence of the ripples, the Duck-billed Charmander's eyelids began to fight gradually, and his eyes became sleepy. Duck-billed Charmander, what are you doing? Smelling salts, come here. Tabitha Rage's voice rang out from the ear of Duck-billed Charmander. Duck-billed Charmander heard Tabitha's voice dimly and immediately trembled all over, regained his spirit, and then looked in the direction of Darkrai in fear. It was almost knocked unconscious by Darkrai's hypnosis. Tabitha's face looked a little ugly, not because Duck-billed Charmander was almost attacked, but because when Gengar and Darkrai released their skills just now, Maen, the trainer, did not speak a word. This tiny tactical coordination was obviously not the style of play decided by Gengar and Darkrai themselves, which only showed one thing. Ma's special ability can be Silent Command. Tabitha thought of the rope connecting the three Pokemon. He didn't expect that this rope could not only enhance the strength of Pokemon, but also achieve Silent Command. You know, when Pokemon fight, trainers will counter each other's moves according to each other's moves and then counterattack. But facing this Silent Command, Tabitha needs to respond immediately without any advance warning. If it weren't for the fact that Charmeleon's original contest condition was very good, no matter how loud Tabitha shouted, Charmeleon would have been knocked unconscious by hypnosis. On the other side, Maen was relieved when he saw Charmeleon's drowsy expression. Being affected by hypnosis means that Charmeleon's ability is not the hidden ability motivation, but the ordinary flame body. This is good news for Maen. Charmeleon is not immune to the sleep status condition, so Darkrai's attack is a big threat to Charmeleon. Meng Flame may cause a burning effect on Pokemon using contact moves. Darkrai is not a Pokemon that is good at close combat, so the ability of Flame Body basically poses no threat to Darkrai. Duck-billed Charmeleon, Camerupt, Triple Heat Wave. Tabitha, on the other side, naturally discovered that Maen's previous test might have exposed the ability of Duck-billed Charmeleon, so she simply launched an attack directly in order to end the battle as soon as possible. Duck-billed Charmeleon and two Camerupts, with the blessing of Sunny Day, directly spit out Heat Wave from their mouths. And the three Heat Waves, under the conditions of Volcano Mouth and Sunny Day, attacked Maen's direction like a heat tsunami that could cover everything. Before they approached Maen and Steven, the two felt the high temperature that could burn everything, and they couldn't help but sweat on their heads. Gengar, Darkrai, and Zweilous quickly gathered and released the Dark Pulse together. Black's evil energy gushed out, and it was difficult to block the incoming heat wave, and they were deadlocked. The middle area of the platform at the entrance of the volcano. Although they resisted the triple heat wave, Mar knew that this stalemate would not last long, because the difference in strength between the two sides was still obvious. Stephen on the other side noticed this situation without Maen's reminder and immediately ordered Skarmory and Metagross to take action. The city target was Tabitha, who was a trainer. Skarmory, Metal Sound. Metagross, Hyper Beam. Skarmory waved Orberga's dual wing beat in the air. The dual wing beat made a harsh sound under the friction in the air, which made Camerupt, who was using Heat Wave, show an uncomfortable expression on his face. The heat wave that was being used could not help but stop. Skarmory's Metal Sound is a skill that does not cause high damage to the fire-type Camerupt, but it is particularly disgusting. Although this noise does not cause damage, it still has an interrupting effect on Eruption. Good Camel's use of skills. Along with the Metal Sound came Stephen Metagross's Hyper Beam. Camerupt Eruption. Facing the attack of Hyper Beam, Tabitha immediately ordered Camerupt to block it. The power of the skill Eruption is related to the contest condition of Pokemon. The better the contest condition, the higher the power of the Pokemon. The power of Eruption used by Camerupt, who was only slightly injured, was basically not weakened. Violent flames sprayed out from behind, blocking Metagross's destructive Death Beam. As Camerupt shifted his attention to Metagross, Maen also successfully resisted the joint attack of the other two Pokemon. Stephen slowly breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Maen resist the attack. But at this moment, something strange happened. Chapter 75. Tabitha suffers a heavy blow. A high-temperature flamethrower shot directly into the air, hitting Skarmory and soaring in the sky. The fire element's restraint damage to the steel element caused Skarmory's body to fall directly from the air and hit the ground heavily. Two troublesome little devils, I wonder what disgusting tricks you have now. Tabitha's gloomy voice came again. And the one who just sent out the flamethrower was the duck-billed fire dragon that had just used Heat Wave. Although the continuous attacks were somewhat exhausting for the elite intermediate duck-billed fire dragon, it was still within the tolerance range. And Skarmory's original contest condition was not good, so it was easy to get rid of Skarmory. There was one less member on Maen's side, and it seemed that the situation was already very bad. But Stephen's Metagross and Skarmory also attracted Tabitha's attention, because Maen delayed enough time. Jengar raised his hands high at this time, and had gathered a huge shadow ball, and threw it directly at the duck-billed fire dragon that had just launched the flamethrower. Seeing the huge shadow ball flying over, Tabitha knew, without a second thought, that the power of that thing was definitely not low. Even if there was a difference in strength, the duck-billed fire dragon would probably be seriously injured after eating such a powerful 167 shadow ball. Camerupt, stand in front of the duck-billed fire dragon and use Protect. Tabitha immediately ordered Camerupt next to the duck-billed fire dragon to stand in front of the shadow ball, and at the same time released a light film to block the sneak attack of the huge shadow ball. Seeing that Protect successfully resisted the attack, Tabitha was not happy yet, but she found that Darkray's figure came to the body of the spray-extinguishing camel using Protect without knowing when the assist shadow ball came to cover. Duck-billed fire dragon. Flamethrower stopped Darkray. The duck-billed fire dragon, which had recovered its strength, immediately spit out flames at Darkray. Darkray faced Flamethrower and directly turned sideways to avoid the attack. However, as Darkray dodged the attack of the duck-billed fire dragon, Tabitha found that the direction Darkray dodged was surprisingly her current position. Combined with Darkray's actions just now, Tabitha suddenly realized that Darkray's target was not the duck-billed fire dragon at all. The continuous attacks on the duck-billed fire dragon before were to make him think that Walkley's target was the duck-billed dragon slayer. After watching Darkray approaching within 20 meters of her, she directly threw a dark void. Tabitha instinctively commanded Camerupt beside her to defend, and the skill she used was still Protect. But Tabitha ignored Stephen's Metagross just now. When she saw Maen Darkray approaching Tabitha, Stephen guessed Maen's idea and immediately commanded Metagross to attack Camerupt. Metagross, Psychic. The powerful mental attack made Camerupt pause, and he did not use the Protect skill immediately. Song Nung Facade intended to use his body to block the attack of Dark Void. Tabitha was also furious when she saw this scene and shouted fiercely, "Duck-billed Ragnarok, Camerupt, Flamethrower, burn that kid to death." Tabitha knew that her side must have been lost, but Maen, who was attacking him with all his strength, was only guarded by the gym-level Jengar and Zweilous. In this case, she would trade people for people, and no one would have an easy time. This was the final gambit choice of Tabitha, who had climbed up from the bottom. Stephen looked anxiously in the direction of Maen when he heard Tabitha's command. The two flamethrowers of Duck-billed Ragnarok and Camerupt had already arrived in front of Maen. Jengar and Zweilous immediately stood in front of Maen, and a light film began to condense on their bodies. It was a magic skill Protect using the strength of the gym level to resist the elite-level Pokemon attacks. Even with the Protect, CFDG, skill plus Samson is unlikely. And Maen had been prepared for this, and directly sent energy along the dark line connecting Jengar and Zweilous. Under the full resistance of Maen and Jengar, the attacks of Rat Halos and Camerupt were successfully resisted at the moment when the Protect Light film was broken. Maen's body couldn't help but stagger, and Jengar and Tyrannosaurus were also breathing heavily at this time. Although the attack was resisted, the physical strength of Maen and Jengar's two Pokemon was basically exhausted, and the dark line connecting the three Pokemon was also broken. But fortunately, Maen's plan had succeeded. Maen watched Darkray's Dark Void hit Camerupt on the other side. The baseball-sized Shadow Ball instantly spread into a black spherical prison, trapping Camerupt in it. And as the black prison shattered, Camerupt fell asleep on the ground. Darkray dreamed. Seeing Camerupt sleeping on the ground, Maen ordered Darkray to use a winning blow. Camerupt, who was resting on the ground, was suddenly covered with black mist, and the expression on Camerupt's face became very painful. As the haze on Camerupt left its body and was injected back into Darkray's body. Darkray's nightmare ability plus the attack of Dream Eater directly made Camerupt, who was lying on the ground, lose his combat ability, and Dream Eater also restored a lot of Darkray's physical strength. Tabitha used Camerupt as a shield to successfully run back to the Duck-billed Fire Dragon, but the price was that she lost a Camerupt that had been upgraded. Now, the situation on the scene has become 2v2. Although Maen was panting, his tone was relaxed. Tabitha gritted her teeth and looked at Maen in front of her. She never dreamed that Maen would dare to play a life-for-life game with him. When he was young, he played a lot of life-for-life games with those Alliance trainers. Those Alliance trainers thought their lives were more precious, and they were always tricked by Tabitha, who climbed up from the bottom. He thought the result this time would be the same, but he didn't expect that Maen actually succeeded in killing him. Now there are two elite-level Pokemon left on each side. The situation is completely balanced. Even though Steven's Metagross contest condition is the worst, Tabitha has no confidence in quickly taking down Maen and Steven. At this moment, a huge explosion suddenly came from the entrance of the cave, and in addition to the explosion, there was also the miserable growl of the members of the lava team. Chapter 76, Secret Weapon. Molter's the explosion at the entrance of the cave attracted the attention of Maen and others. Then Maen saw Drake Elite riding Salamence out of the cave, and Salamence was holding a fainted member of the Magma team under his claws. The abnormal situation on MT Chimney and the lost Professor Cosmo finally attracted the attention of the Alliance, and it was Maen's acquaintance who came here, Drake Elite. As Salamence dropped the bodies of the Magma team members, Drake Elite, who was sitting on Salamance's back, also saw the figures of Maen and Steven. Maen and Steven from his Vochi family, you two have worked hard, and I will take care of the rest. Drake Elite was relieved to see that Maen and Steven were not hurt. When he came, Drake Elite had already forced the Magma team to ask for the details, and guessed who the young man who used Jengar and Metagross was. So he came here on his 10th road, riding the Violent Dragon. If Maen and Steven really died here, it is estimated that not only the Magma team, but also the gate of the Alliance headquarters will be demolished by Agatha and the people of the Devon group. Maen and Steven were relieved to see Drake Elite. After all, the contest condition of the two was not very good. Steven only had Metagross with 30% combat power left. Although Darkray's contest condition was good on Maen's side, the physical strength of other Pokemon and Maen was basically at the bottom. Just when Maen and others were relieved, Professor Cosmo's shout suddenly sounded. Maen and others hurriedly looked over and found that the two elite Pokémon on the side of Fire Tree held Metagross and Darkrai, while Fire Tree himself sent out his other two quasi-elite Pokémon, a Torkoal and a Crobat, to seize the meteorite in Professor Cosmo's hands. Crobat released ultrasonic waves in the air, and under the influence of ultrasonic waves, Professor Cosmo instinctively covered his ears. The device containing meteorite in his hand could not help but fall to the ground. Crobat, who was very fast, immediately took meteorite and flew toward the Fire Tree at high speed. Gengar and other Pokémon who noticed that meteorite was taken away immediately wanted to stop Crobat, but were stopped by Torkoal and two other elite Pokémon. Especially Torkoal, who was standing in the front, suddenly had white light all over his body, and there was a faint arc in the white light. And there's only one skill that can cause this situation: self-destruct. Maen and Steven immediately commanded Gengar and other Pokémon to dodge. After all, the power of the skill self-destruct is not a joke. And with a loud bang, the ground around Torkoal was directly blown into a deep pit, and Torkoal himself was lying in the pit with bruises all over his body and lost his combat effectiveness. Fortunately, Gengar's Pokémon dodged in time, so they were not affected by self-destruct. On the other side, Crobat also took this opportunity to send meteorite back to Tabitha's side, and then Tabitha also grabbed Crobat's claws, as if she was going to escape from the air. Mavage team, have you forgotten that I still exist? Drake Elite's voice sounded from soaring in the sky. Maen, Tabitha, and others looked up and found that Drake Elite had come directly above Tabitha, without knowing when, and Salamence also had an Altaria and Flygon beside him. Three elite-level Pokémon stood still, completely blocking Tabitha's escape route. When the experienced Drake Elite found Torkoal's self-destruct, he knew what Tabitha was thinking on the opposite side, and directly led the Pokémon to intercept in the air. Stand on the ground and wait to die, Magma Team guy. Drake Elite saw Tabitha surrounded below, and his expression on his face was very calm. Tabitha saw that Drake Elite blocked all the roads, and her face looked uglier than ever. The current situation looked like a life-or-death situation. Only Maen saw that Tabitha's expression was a little strange. In everyone's opinion, Tabitha was already trapped, but Maen clearly saw that there was still a desire to survive in Tabitha's eyes. At this time, Maen suddenly thought of the secret weapon mentioned by the Magma Team before, and hurriedly looked at Tabitha's hand. Because there were no machines on the scene, there was only one kind of secret weapon, a powerful Pokémon. Sure enough, Tabitha sneered at this time, and then said, "I didn't want to use this, but you forced me to do it. I hope you enjoy it." After that, Tabitha took out a locked Pokeball from her pocket and threw it fiercely at the Drake Elite soaring in the sky. As the Pokeball emitted a burst of white light, the secret weapon of the Magma Team appeared. Cry! A sharp bird sound appeared, and as the bird sound appeared, Maen and others suddenly felt that the temperature around them rose rapidly, and the heat made people sweat on their heads. Kanzakorn, Ganzen, but the sweat on the top of the head dripped onto the chest. But no one cared, because everyone's attention was attracted by the Pokémon that appeared. The Pokémon that appeared in the Pokeball had red feathers, almost brown skin, and a sharp and straight beak. The streamlined crown and the flaming tail were all made of flames. The wings were also covered with flaming feathers. In the Pokémon world, people describe its wings like this. It flapped its fiercely burning wings, and even the night sky would be lit up. And this Pokémon was Moltres, one of the 3 sacred birds of Kanto. Maen never dreamed that the Pokémon prepared by the Magma Team was Moltres, because Maen had never heard of this Pokémon in the animation and the game. Moreover, even if they're not the 3 divine birds with divine duties, it would take a lot of effort to capture the ordinary 3 divine birds. It is known that Magishur made a lot of noise in order to capture Zapdos, but the Lava Team actually captured Moltres so quietly, which was beyond Maen's expectation. But the most important thing is why Tabitha, who has Moltres, didn't release it immediately. You know, with Moltres, Maen and I are afraid that they can't hold on for so long. At this time, The sharp-eyed Maen found a black collar hanging around Molter's neck. Chapter 77. Maen, Drake versus elite high-level Molters. After seeing the black collar on Molter's neck, Maen guessed why Tabitha didn't command Molters. As an organization that aspires to awaken Groudon, Team Magma has a special preference for fire-type Pokemon throughout the organization, and also has special experience in dealing with fire-type Pokemon. And that collar is probably the key to Team Magma's recovery of Molters. Molter's contest condition is the same as Maen guessed. The moment he appeared, his eyes were red and scanned all the Pokemon and humans present. Then Molters frantically fanned the burning dual wing beat and used the Heat Wave. Compared with the Heat Wave used by Charmeleon and Camerupt before, the Heat Wave of Flamebird is extremely powerful in both range and power. The entire volcano was 297, with countless ember flying under Molters' fanning. Steven's Metagross was already in poor contest condition. Under this sudden heat wave attack, it was burned and lost its combat ability and fell to the ground. Maen also hurriedly took back Zweilous and let Gengar hide in his shadow. Darkrai stood in front of Maen to block Molter's attack. Drake Elite also commanded his Pokemon to resist Molter's attack. The only one who was not hurt on the entire field was Tabitha of the Magma team. He didn't know when he pressed a button on a remote control on his wrist, and his clothes were instantly wrapped in a layer of red film. The heat wave disappeared when it blew on the film, and it couldn't hurt Tabitha under the film at all. Steven, Maen, take Professor Cosmo away quickly. Molters is already rioted. I need to concentrate on the battle in this environment of volcano and cannot be distracted to take care of you. Drake Elite did not dare to stay in the air riding Salamence, because the entire soaring in the sky was already covered by Molters' flames. The crazy Molters had already ignored the loss of power, and the entire mouth of volcano was constantly flowing with arcs of fire. Steven, take Professor Cosmo and go first. I will command Darkrai to assist Drake Elite. Maen turned his head and said to Steven beside him. Steven did not say anything polite when he heard Maen's words. He directly helped Professor Cosmo up and planned to leave the cave, because he was completely a burden without Pokemon to participate in the battle. Staying here would distract Drake and Maen. Then you should also be more careful of Maen, Steven said, and pulled Professor Cosmo out of the cave. Drake Elite, on the other side, looked at Maen with appreciation after hearing what he said, and did not refuse Maen's help. After all, fighting in this environment was not a favorable choice for Drake, and having Maen's help could indeed make him feel a lot more relaxed. Drake threw out 2 more Pokeballs, releasing Haxorus and Dragalge, both of which were also elite level. Here we should tag a certain flying elite to see what a real dragon-type elite looks like. Drake Elite should have had an elite level Kingdra, but Kingdra was completely suffering in this hot environment and could only exert half of its strength, so Drake did not release it. With 5 elite level Pokemon, plus an elite level Darkrai from Maen's side to assist, they were not afraid of Molters at all. Maen, it's up to us to cooperate now, let's go. Okay, Drake Elite. Molters on the other side was also attracted by Drake and Maen. Although he lost his mind, he also felt the hostility of Maen and looked up at the high-pitched cry of soaring in the sky. The cry grew like a ripple throughout the mouth of the volcano. In this cry, Maen instinctively felt a sense of fear and oppression. Maen, be careful. The ability of Molters is oppression. When facing it, trainer and Pokemon will be affected. Pay more attention. Maen heard Drake Elite's reminder and nodded solemnly. Drake also moved from Salamence back to the ground and stood behind Haxorus. After all, riding Salamence would affect Salamance's performance, and Haxorus, as the ground unit in this battle, had no way to deal with Molters in the air. After all, Haxorus' special attack was too weak. Salamence, Altaria, Dragon Pulse. Flygon, Rock Attack. Dragalge, Sludge Bomb. Drake quickly commanded the Pokemon to start the battle, and also commanded Darkrai to wait for the opportunity. 0-1-2-3-1-0-5-2-5-1-2-2-0-1-1-5-9-1. Except for Dragalge, the other Pokemon all flapped their wings and flew into the air, standing in different positions and releasing skills towards Molters. Facing the attacking skills, Molters directly flapped his wings and released a large amount of flames, blocking Dragon Pulse, then flying sideways to avoid Rock Attack, and then spitting out flames from his mouth to block Sludge Bomb. Although he lost his mind, Molters' fighting instinct was still not lost, and he blocked the attack of Drake Elite's Pokemon. However, behind Molters, Darkrai appeared from the shadows and through the dark void gathered in his hands towards Molters. Molters, who didn't notice behind him, was hit by the dark void and his body was instantly wrapped in the dark sphere. However, only 3 seconds later, the sphere formed by the black hole quickly expanded, and then Molters flapped his wings and fly, directly breaking the dark void's wrapping, and at the same time released a large amount of fire rain around. Molters directly broke free from the attack of the Dark Void with his powerful strength, and at the same time resisted the contest condition of sleep and released a large range of attacks. 5.9. The scattered fire rain sprinkled like meteors normal in the sky and on the ground. Drake pulled Marn's body and hid behind Haxorus. The flying fire rain was dispersed by Haxorus's 2 fangs that emitted white light, and Drake's other Pokemon and Darkrai also nimbly avoided Molters' attack. Although he broke free from the attack of Dark Void, the large-scale attack, plus the joint attack of 6 elite-level Pokemon gradually made Molters, a legendary beast, fall into a disadvantage. Temple This is also the biggest feature of Pokemon with or without Trainer Command. Pokemon with Trainer will choose a more labor-saving and effective way of fighting in battle, while Pokemon like Molters who have lost their mind and cannot be commanded fight more by instinct and anger. Chapter 78 Rage Potion and Champion Molters. Tabitha, standing on the ground, saw Molters at a disadvantage, and her expression was a little gloomy. She had planned to use Molters' strength to repel Drake and Maen, and then Tabitha would take Meteorite and Molters and escape. But Tabitha underestimated Maen and Drake's strength. Darkrai is not to be mentioned. Old elites like Drake Elite have fought hard, and each Pokemon has experienced hundreds of battles. Facing the irrational Molters, they would not mess up their formation at all, but would join forces to attack Molters with ease. Damn it, it seems that Molters can't be taken. Take Meteorite away first, otherwise Maxie will be angry. Anyway, Meteorite is the key. As for Molters, although it's a pity, there is still a chance to get it again. Tabitha gritted her teeth and muttered to herself, then controlled the remote control so that the film on the clothes also wrapped Crobat, and then pulled Crobat's body slowly up to soaring in the sky. No, that guy is going to escape. Flygon, go stop that guy. Mom, you command Darkrai to help me attack Molters. Don't mess up the rhythm. Drake Elite spotted Tabitha, who wanted to escape at a glance, and commanded Flygon to stop Tabitha from taking Meteorite. However, Tabitha, who rose to the middle of the air, did not feel any fear. Instead, she smiled evilly and stretched out her wrist, pressing the red button on it. At the moment the button was pressed, a needle suddenly stretched out from the inside of the device on Molters' neck, piercing Molters' neck fiercely, and then the red, unknown liquid stored in the device quickly injected into Molters' body along his neck. When the red, unknown liquid was injected, the device on the neck also lost power, and it broke directly and fell from the air to the ground. At this time, the flames on Molters' body were surging wildly, and his strength was constantly rising. When Molters' momentum climbed to the peak, Molters' strength also changed, breaking through directly to the champion level. Flames gushed out of Molters' body, dying soaring in the sky red. Before Flygon could get close to Tabitha to stop him, he was frightened back to his original position by the gushing flames. Under the protection of the special fireproof suits, Tabitha and Crobat were not affected. Old Man Drake and you 2 little devils. Tabitha will remember this grudge. We'll see each other later. Oh no, you should survive Molters' attack first. Tabitha laughed triumphantly, and then Maen and Drake saw Tabitha fly directly out of the volcano under the leadership of Crobat and escape from empty chimney with Meteorite. However, Maen and Drake had no way to care about Tabitha at this time, because Molters in front of them had gone completely crazy. If the previous molters still had a trace of reason and fighting instinct, then the current molters has completely turned into a beast of rage. The potion just now not only forcibly raised Molter's strength, but also destroyed Molter's last bit of rationality. Drake Elite looked at Molters in front of him with an ugly face. Although there's only a thin line between elite and champion level, the two are fundamentally different. If Drake and Maen were able to deal with Molters with ease just now they must be fully focused. The most important thing is that Maen and Drake cannot retreat at this time, because if the two of them leave, Rage's Molter's next target will be the residents under MT Chimney. Although the Alliance has been evacuated urgently, there's still many residents and tourists left below. If Molters rushes out of MT Chimney, it will be a disaster for the Pokémon and people under the mountain. This is going to be a life-threatening situation, Maen. Be careful next time. Drake Elite's tone became more serious than ever. Yes, but Molter's contest condition is very wrong. Maen looked at Molter's body and felt something was wrong, but he couldn't confirm it. At this time, Darkray's telepathic voice came. Maen, Molters is in pain. I can feel that his soul is wailing. The life energy in his body is fading. He may be dying soon. Darkray's voice was filled with sympathy and rage. It thought of the contest condition in which it was imprisoned before. Molter's contest condition at this time was just like normal when its power was extracted. It's just that Darkray's extraction would not affect the origin, but Molter's improvement in strength came at the cost of his life. Maen's face turned very ugly when he heard Darkray's words. He finally understood why he felt that Molter's contest condition was a bit wrong. The red liquid that Tabitha injected into Molter's before should be the product of the experiment. This liquid should be able to greatly increase the strength of Pokémon. Even the threshold from elite to champion can be broken, but this improvement in strength has a price. The price is the crazy consumption of Pokémon's life energy and 447 souls. The reason and body of this Molters have been completely consumed and withered under this external oppression. Maen informed Drake Elite of his conclusion, and Drake Elite was silent when he heard Maen's words. But I can sense that this person who has dedicated his 10 lives to the destruction in the heart of the Pokémon old man. Maen, if that's the case, then don't hold back. We have to do our best to free Molters as soon as possible. Drake Elite's tone was steady, but Maen could feel the fire in the old man's heart was already burning. After this incident, Team Magma would be thoroughly punished in the Hoenn region. Molter's momentum and strength had stopped rising, but Maen could see that Molter's dual wing beat had some small wounds, and a few drops of blood like flames fell to the ground. Cry. As Molters called, the fire energy at the mouth of the volcano seemed to be attracted by normal and surged wildly. Even Zhu, deactivated MT Chimney, began to show signs of activity. 012310525 Falu 1220291. Molter's fan dual wing beat, and the flames surrounded the entire mouth of the volcano like a fire dragon normal, wrapping Maen, Drake, and other Pokémon tightly in the volcano. Chapter 79, The Fall and Rebirth of the Divine Beast. This can't be fire spin, but the range and power are too outrageous. Is this the strength of a champion-level beast? How terrifying would Groudon, Kyogre, and other first-level gods be? Maen looked at the flames surrounding the entire volcano and the gradually shrinking encirclement, and the sweat on his face couldn't stop flowing down. But now is obviously not the time for Maen to be dazed. He and Drake immediately commanded the Pokémon to attack Molters. They still beat Molters as before, but this time Maen and Drake found that the attacks of Pokémon, such as Salamence and Darkrai, were blocked by the flames on Molters when they flew in front of Molters. Those attacks lost their power after breaking the flame protection on Molters, and the flame shield quickly absorbed the fire energy next to it to repair itself. As the fire spin encircled closer and closer, the wounds on Molters' body became bigger and bigger, and blood began to drip onto the ground along with the dual wing beat. The gas rose from the ground. Just when Maen was at a loss, he suddenly felt a cold feeling on his right hand. Maen lowered his head and saw that Marshadao had held Maen's hand at some point, And then Maen felt that the dark power that had been exhausted had been replenished and recovered a small part. Maen looked at Marshadow's eyes and knew that it should have noticed Molters' contest condition, so it was willing to help Maen give Molters a chance to be relieved. As the dark power injection ended, Marshadow quietly returned to Maen's shadow again. Maen clenched his fists and looked at Molters, who was soaring in the sky. His eyes became very firm. "Drake Elite, help me delay for a while. Then let Salamence and the others use all their skills to attack in one place, and then I will launch the final attack." Drake Elite did not ask any more questions after hearing what Maen said, because he believed in Maen's strength. Since Maen could say such words, it naturally means that Maen has absolute confidence. Drake Elite quickly commanded Salamence and other Pokemon to return to the front and firmly blocked Maen. Maen called back Darkrai, put his hands behind Darkrai, and injected dark power with all his strength. Darkrai, full dark void. Darkrai gathered his hands together, and the dark power began to gather crazily. Although he lost his mind, Molters could still sense the powerful energy fluctuations and began to speed up the encirclement of fire spin crazily, while spewing flames in the direction of Darkrai. But Salamence and the others had already stood in position in advance and blocked Molters' attack with all their strength. As Darkrai's Dark Void was ready, Maen also tilted his body and was hit by Drake Elite supported him. Salamence, full attack. Drake Elite, who supported Maen, did not hesitate and directly ordered Salamence and other Pokemon to attack Molters with all their strength. Several Dragon Energy beams turned into light beams and directly broke the flames wrapped around Molters, tearing a huge hole in the protective shield composed of flames. And Darkrai also threw Dark Void in the direction of the hole. Compared to the previous Dark Void, this Dark Void is deeper and smaller in size, but Maen knows that this is the result of Darkrai's full compression. As the Dark Void passed through the hole and hit Molters' body, a huge black hole enveloped Molters' body. Everything in the black hole seemed to be annihilated normal, and the flames on Molters' body also became flickering under this attack. The fire spin surrounding Maen and others was shattered, and the huge black hole also dissipated. Molters' body fell from the air after the black hole dissipated, and the flames on his body were like a candle in the wind. Normal was about to dissipate, and his body was covered with dense wounds. With a bang, Molters' body fell to the ground. Maen and Drake walked silently to Molters' side, looking at the dying Molters. Molters opened his eyes and looked in the direction of Maen. Now he had regained his sanity, and his eyes were full of gratitude and relief. He was very grateful to Maen and Drake for helping him get rid of the pain, and seemed to want to remember Maen's face. Molters finally hummed softly, looked at Maen deeply, and then slowly closed his eyes. With the flames on Molters extinguished, his life also came to the final end. Drake Elite, let's bury it in the magma pool in the volcano, which can be regarded as sending it on its last journey. Drake Elite did not refuse Maen's proposal and planned to command Pokemon to send Molters on his last journey. 012310525 Philo 122021191. Maen squatted down and gently stroked Molters' body, which still had body temperature, but the emotions in his heart were somewhat difficult to express. At this time, Maen suddenly felt a little warm in the pocket on his chest. Maen hurriedly put his hand in his pocket and then took out the hot object, the Ho-Oh feather dyed black. Maen seemed to sense the emotions from this black Ho-Oh feather, and then put the Ho-Oh feather on Molters' body. After the Ho-Oh feather touched Molters' body, it instantly bloomed with colorful rainbow light. The rainbow light tightly wrapped Molters' body, and at the same time, Maen, Drake Elite, and other Pokemon, King Lee, who were present, seemed to hear a bird's cry in their ears. Maen identified the owner of the bird's cry. It was Ho-Oh. After the rainbow light flashed, black mist like ink also sprayed out from the feathers, also wrapped Molters' body. The rainbow light and darkness complemented each other, and then blended with each other to wrap Molters' body together, forming a shining black sphere. A minute later, as the black sphere continued to shrink, Molters' body on the ground also disappeared. Under the surprised eyes of Maen and others, the black sphere began to surge and change. After the surge, the black light ball began to shrink continuously until the black light ball shrank to the size of an egg. The outer black shell and the rainbow light disappeared, revealing the object wrapped under it. It was a Pokemon egg. Chapter 80 Galar Molter's Pokemon Egg in the Pokemon World. Apart from some unique gods, some mythical beasts and phantom Pokemon do not exist as individuals. For example, in the movie, 5 phantom Pokemon gene sects even appeared in the group activity. As the light of the Ho-Oh feather dimmed, Normal flew back to the pocket on Maen's chest as if it had consciousness. And the Pokemon egg floating in front of Maen was Molter's Pokemon egg without guessing. However, Maen found that the Pokemon egg in front of him was not the fiery red color of the fire Pokemon. Instead, the egg pattern on the eggshell was black like ink, and the black shell was dotted with patterns like flames normal. The Pokemon egg of this color is definitely not a normal Molter's. At this time, Maen suddenly remembered the Galar region, which is still unknown. The Molters in the Galar region are not the fire-type Molters of the usual Molters, but the evil-type and flying-type Jing-Jin. Molters from the Galar region is a migratory Pokemon that appears in the Crown Snowfield every few decades. For a long time, it was regarded as the legendary Pokemon Molters because of the evil aura that burned on its appearance like a burning fire. Maen remembered the introduction of Molters from the Galar region in his previous life, which means that Molters from the Galar region was not born in the Galar region, but migrated to the Crown Snowfield every year. But now the Pokemon egg in front of him gave Maen some clues. The previous Molters not only had a feeling of relief before his death, but also had rage and hatred for Team Magma. The hatred from his soul, plus the resurrection of the black Ho-Oh feather, may have created such a special Molters. And other Galar regional variant Molters may also appear in special forms, because they were born in some regions with special auras. Maen felt the familiar feeling coming from the Pokemon egg in front of him, and instinctively held the suspended egg in his arms. There was no warm feeling, but Maen felt a cool feeling from the shell of the Pokemon egg, CFDC. Drake, who was standing by, saw the whole scene. Even though he was well informed, he couldn't help but marvel at Maen's luck. With the Phantom Pokemon Darkrai and this Pokemon egg, plus 2 elite-level Pokemon descendants, Maen's future was limitless. Maen looked at Drake hesitantly while holding the Pokemon egg. But before Maen could speak, Exorcist reached out to stop Maen from saying the next thing. Don't worry, Maen. I know what you want to say. I will keep the Pokemon egg a secret for you. After all, only you and I know what happened here in the end. I also hope that you will grow up sooner. After all, the future of Alliance still needs young people like you. Thank you, Drake Elite. Maen was very grateful to Drake Elite for keeping the secret. After all, this was a Pokemon egg of a legendary beast. If other people knew about it, even if Agatha Elite was backing Maen, there would be crazy desperados who would keep looking for Maen's traces. Drake Elite took back the other Pokemon, leaving only Salamence and Flygon. After seeing Maen put the Pokemon eggs back in his backpack, Drake Elite motioned for Maen to sit behind Flygon, and then flew away from MT Chimney with Maen. After Maen and Drake flew away from the volcano of MT Chimney, Hinti and Raikou, 3 Pokemon of the Ho-Oh Guard, stood high on a mountain and watched Maen fly away. Hinti, how is it? Your child has passed the test, right? When Molters was dying, Hinti actually planned to use the fire of life given by Ho-Oh to save Molters, but he didn't expect that Maen's Black Phoenix feather could do the same thing. The trial that Suicune mentioned is the Ho-Oh trial mentioned earlier. If Suicune tests the trainer's sincerity to Pokemon, then Hinti tests his love for Pokemon. Only a trainer with a normal love for Pokemon can pass Hinti's trial and help Molters to be liberated and reborn at the same time. This is definitely a trait. Because the Ho-Oh feather cannot be activated at any time, it will only be activated when there is a strong desire in the heart. Unlike the gentle Suicune, Hinti nodded coldly when he heard Suicune's words, and then kicked off the platform with all 4 legs and rushed into the jungle under his feet. Although Hinti left, Suicune clearly saw when Hinti left Hinti's eyes were filled with admiration, but he just smiled gently and then he and Reiku followed Nei into the woods. A base of the lava team in the Hoenn region. Executive Tabitha came to the base and opened the video call. As the video call started, Maxie with red semi-long hair appeared on the screen. Tabitha, since you sent me the video, it means that the plan should be successful. Seeing Maxie on the screen, Tabitha showed an admiring and respectful expression on her face and said, "Maxie, I have fulfilled my mission. I have brought back the meteorite." After that, Itsuen took out the device containing the meteorite. "Well done, Tabitha. This has taken our plan one step further." Seeing the meteorite, Maxie couldn't help but smile on his cold face. "It's just that, Maxie, you didn't bring back the molters you gave me, but you didn't leave it to the Alliance. Before I left, I injected Molters with the maximum dose of the violent potion, and Molters was dead. It doesn't matter as long as meteorite is brought back. Molters is rare, but not as good as Groudon, so let him die." Maxie didn't care about Molter's life or death at all. After the video call ended, Maxie stood on the top floor of a tall building, looking at the scenery below, with a smile on his face that he couldn't hide at all, and said to himself, "Now, the first stage of awakening Groudon has been completed. As long as the orb and Groudon's sleeping place are found, then the world can be completely changed." Chapter 81, A Little Break, AC in the Hoenn region. A cruise ship quietly stayed on the water, and the people standing on the deck were wearing blue pirate-like clothes. The leader of the group, standing on the deck, was a muscular man with dark skin and bare upper body. This strong man was Team Aqua's executive, Ah Chao. "Boss Ah Chao, we found something." At this time, a member of Team Aqua wearing a dive suit emerged from the water under the ship and shouted loudly to Ah Chao standing on the deck. Ah Chao smiled when he heard the report from his men, and then made a video call. The other end of the video was naturally the leader of Team Aqua, Archie, who was dressed like a pirate. "Boss Archie, we found the stuff, but our informant in the Magma team just sent us a message that the Magma team also succeeded. Those Alliance guys are really useless. They actually let the Magma team get the meteorite." "Haha, well done, Akeo. As long as we get the stuff, we don't have to worry about the Magma team. On the contrary, Maxie helped us attract the Alliance's firepower so that our plan can be implemented so smoothly. Hurry up and send the blue water drop back so that our plan can proceed to the next step dash dot." Akeo and Archie's laughter resounded throughout the deck. To awaken Groudon and Kyogre, 3 elements are needed. One is the Crimson Orb and the Indigo Orb, and the other is the sleeping place of the 2 Pokemon. To awaken the 2 Pokemon, a key medium is needed. That is the meteorite in the hands of the Magma team and the blue water drop obtained by Team Aqua. These 2 things contain the energy of the 2 mythical beasts. With these 2 things, Groudon and Kyogre can be successfully awakened. Maen, who didn't know that the Hoenn region was about to fall into disaster, went to the nearest town to Lavaridge Town with Steven and Drake Elite after returning to Lavaridge Town. Green Town is famous for its refreshing air. Although it is close to MT Chimney, volcanic ash will not blow here due to the wind direction, so it is a good place for many weak patients to recuperate. Drake Elite left after safely sending Maen and Steven to Green Town, intending to report to the Hoenn Alliance headquarters. Maen and Steven decided to stay here, mainly because they wanted to take a good rest in the comfortable environment here. After all, in the Battle of MT Chimney, Maen, Jengar, and Zweilous were all exhausted except Darkrai, and they had to rest well, and Steven was injured. But there are also benefits. That is, this battle is very good for the growth of Pokemon. After digesting the experience of this battle, Jengar and Zweilous may be one step closer to the strength, and it is estimated that they will soon grow to the quasi-elite level. But the most important thing for Maen at present is the Moltres Pokemon egg obtained in MT Chimney. After arriving in Greentown, Maen bought the most advanced hatching device at the Pokemon Center, and then carefully put the Pokemon egg into it. At this time, in Maen's room, Maen and Jengar and other Pokemon were all around the Pokemon egg, looking at the Pokemon egg carefully. When Maen was holding the Pokemon egg, he found that the Pokemon egg seemed to consciously absorb Maen's dark power, and Maen did not stop it. Every time, it stopped when the Pokemon egg was saturated. After staying in Greentown for 3 days, Maen planned to leave, and Stephen also planned to say goodbye to Maen here. Maen, what are your plans next? Plans. Hearing Stephen's words, Maen showed a thoughtful expression on his face. Maen regardait his journée. He wanted to explore the ancient ruins peacefully, but he encountered pirates. Then he went to Laveridge Town to take a vacation, but the vacation failed. Instead, he went to fight with the people of the lava team. In the end, Maen seemed to be entangled in troubles until now. Could it be that his character was too low? In the end, Maen made a decision. It was definitely not because of his low character, but because of his bad luck. So this time, Maen planned to take his Pokemon to rest for a while. Jengar and Zweilous were about to break through. I think it's a good idea to train well in a quiet place and stabilize the state. Please give flowers after hearing Maen's decision. Stephen recommended a place to Maen. Lily Cove City. Lily Cove City is one of the most prosperous regions in the Hoenn region, and it is a rare resort near the sea. There are also various islands between Lily Cove City and Moss Deep City for travel, and the famous breakers are also available for sea travel. Hearing Stephen's recommendation, Maen was also a little moved and finally got unanimous approval after voting with his own Pokemon. Then Ma Hui and Mu Chu went to Lily Cove City separately. Lily Cove City, where the land ends and the sea begins. This is a big city in the eastern part of the Hoenn region. Not only does it have the famous Lily Cove City Art Gallery and Department Store, but the harbor of Lily Cove City also has the famous breakers. Wearing beach pants and bare upper body, wearing sunglasses and a straw hat, Maen stepped on the sand, watching the tourists playing on the beach, and felt extremely relaxed in his heart. After finding an open space, Jengar emerged from Maen's shadow, and then took out parasols, lounge chairs, and other props from the storage space in his stomach, and quickly placed them on the open space. Then he put on sunglasses like Maen and lay comfortably on the chair. Zweilous was also released by Maen and lay on the warm sand with peace of mind. Darkrai and Marshadao didn't like being watched, so they still hid in the shadows, but they also curiously observed the surrounding scenery along the shadows around them. The happiest one was Maen's only sister, Pokemon Lapras, who swam happily on the beach and sang happily from time to time. Lapras's cute appearance and beautiful singing also attracted the attention of many tourists, especially many young ladies. As a Lapras trainer, Maen also had a rare feast for his eyes and saw many beautiful bodies of cool young ladies. 012310525122021441. As for picking a fight, that is impossible. Normal people can see Jengar and Zweilous next to Maen, and the trainer who can carry this kind of Pokemon is definitely not an ordinary person. So naturally, there is no one who is blind enough to come and pick a fight. Chapter 82, Relicanth and the Mysterious Voice. This time, Maen rested in Lily Cove City and the surrounding islands for half a month. During this half month, Jengar and Zweilous have successfully broken through to the quasi-elite level and have also consolidated their own realm. The most important thing is that Maen and his Pokemon have rarely enjoyed a comfortable vacation in this half month. At this time, Maen and his Pokemon also came to the last stop of the vacation, Wazawa Island. Wazawa Island is located between Lily Cove City and Moss Deep City. It is a rare resort with a blue sea, soaring in the sky, and soft beaches. However, although Maen came here for vacation, he also had other plans, which was to recapture Relicanth here. Although in the animation, even the seafood owner here knows Relicanth and the Pokemon map 997 can clearly identify Relicanth as information at that time. But that was a few years later. At this time, ancient Pokemon like Relicanth are very rare. Even Alliance does not have many Relicanths. It was not until the emergence of Dasha Valley that ancient Pokemon were supplemented in large quantities, providing a lot of materials for the study of ancient Pokemon. Maen asked Professor Oak and Professor Birch for help more than once, and there was nothing to thank the two professors. So Maen planned to find a Relicanth here, and then try to recover two and give them to Professor Oak, which was also a thank you for their help. As usual, Maen bought a set of dive clothes and also chartered a miniature dive boat. After all, the location of Relicanth is in a hidden grotto in the deep sea. On the other side, Lapras went into the water as a helper to assist Maen. Lapras seemed very happy to help Maen and couldn't help singing on the shore, which also made Maen, who was changing into a dive suit, smile knowingly. At this time, Lapras, who was singing, was suddenly stunned and then looked around with a puzzled expression on his face. Maen had also changed into his dive suit at this time. Seeing Lapras' expression, he curiously patted its carapace and asked Lapras what happened. Lapras still had a puzzled expression on his face and then whimpered at Maen a few times. Darkrai and Maen's shadow acted as a translator, telling Maen that Lapras heard someone talking to it. Maen was also a little confused after hearing this. Most people on the beach were resting, and Maen also deliberately found a place with few people to act. It stands to reason that if someone talked to Lapras, Maen would know it at the first time. But there was no one around, and Lapras also said that he only heard one time, and then he didn't hear it again. In the end, Maen had to put aside his doubts and led Lapras into the water to find Relicanth. Maen, driving the dive boat, assist radar easily moved towards underwater. Maen remembered that the location of the Relicanth was in a seafloor cavern in the underwater mountain range, and that seafloor cavern was entered through the sea current. Sure enough, when Maen drove the dive boat to the bottom of the sea, he found the sea current, and Maen drove the dive boat into the sea current. Lapras followed the dive boat to protect Maen at any time. Following the sea current through the narrow cave, Maen entered the seafloor cavern. Just like what Maen saw in the anime, in the huge seafloor cavern, Maen found the shipwreck that appeared in the anime, and the Relicanth group swimming around the shipwreck. Maen remembered that the so-called treasure in the shipwreck was some green shards, which were far less valuable than these swimming Relicanths. What Maen didn't expect was that there was actually a signal in this underwater cave, which just facilitated Maen's actions, and he directly made a video call to Professor Oak. When the video call was connected, Maen saw Professor Oak on the other side of the camera, but in addition to Professor Oak, there was also Otamaki Hero. Under Maen's curious questioning, Maen knew that Professor Oak came to the Hoenn region to discuss Pokemon issues and would return to Kanto soon. Maen, what do you want me to do for you this time? Professor Oak asked Maen what he needed help with, and Maen felt a little embarrassed. Ahem, Professor Oak, I'm not asking for your help this time, but I accidentally found this while on vacation. After Maen finished speaking, he pointed the camera at the Relicanth swimming in the water. Professor Oak immediately put his face to the screen when he saw the Relicanth group on Maen's video, excitedly shouted, "This is this Relicanth. Maen, where did you find this Pokemon?" The most important thing is that they appear in a group activity. This means that they regard this place as a habitat. Professor Birch, next to him, heard Professor Oak's words and pushed Professor Oak away, and also leaned close to the screen to watch carefully. Professor Birch's main research direction is the habitat and distribution of Pokemon. There's originally little research on ancient Pokemon, such as Relicanth, but this time you can actually see Relicanth groups moving around, and Professor Birch immediately found the research topic for this period of time. Maen helplessly listened to the instructions of the two professors behind the video and filmed videos for them everywhere. On the other side, Jengar and other Pokemon got into the sunken ship and carefully searched for any treasures. Only Lapras' behavior was a little strange because it heard the strange sound just now, and this sound seemed to be calling it. Lapras also looked deeper into the seafloor cavern and then swam slowly over. Not only did Maen not notice Lapras' departure, but even Jengar's Pokemon didn't care. After Maen sent the coordinates of the location to the two professors, he hung up the phone and breathed a sigh of relief. Professor Oak and the others would not arrive here until tomorrow, and before they arrived, Maen hoped that Maen would protect the scene here, so Maen encouraged Song to stay here temporarily. It was time for dinner, and Maen planned to call his Pokemon to prepare for dinner, but then he realized that Lapras was gone. Chapter 83 Jirachi Maen called out Lapras' name, but found no response and showed an anxious expression on his face. On the other side, Jengar and the others also heard Maen's voice. After finding that Lapras was missing, they hurriedly threw down the treasure chest of the sunken ship and then quickly began to search in the cave. At this moment, Maen heard Lapras' voice and hurriedly looked in the direction of the voice. Lapras swam back from the depths of the cave, and Lapras still had a piece of purple prismatic crystal in his mouth. Maen hurried to Lapras' side and asked carefully if it was hurt. Lapras smiled and said that it was okay, and gently put the amethyst on the ground. Maen also noticed this amethyst and always felt that it was familiar, and then asked Lapras why. Lapras couldn't explain the reason, but he felt that he was called by this crystal, so he went to a deep crevice to find this crystal. Listening to Lapras' explanation, Maen squatted on the ground and looked at the amethyst carefully, and the familiar feeling became stronger and stronger. 25 at this time, Maen suddenly thought of something and asked Lapras to sing again. Although Lapras was confused, he still sang with a smile. The beautiful and melodious singing sounded throughout the cave, and even the relicants swimming on the water surface showed a smile on their faces. As the singing passed, Maen picked up the amethyst and noticed that the light was flowing on the amethyst. Maen also heard the sound coming from the crystal for the first time. The stars. The stars are calling me. Hearing the crisp sound coming from the crystal, Maen showed an expression of as expected. This crystal is the Pokemon Jirachi that wakes up once every 1,000 years. There is more than one Jirachi in the animation, which means that this Pokemon is not fixed in one place, but scattered all over the world. But Maen did not expect to find Jirachi in this cave, because the animation did not mention any information about Jirachi at all. Maen suddenly thought of the shipwreck. The seafood store owner said in the animation that there was a treasure left here, but the last treasure in the animation was a box of green shards on the ground. Although these fragments are precious and can be used to make jewelry, they are far from being treasures. So Maen suspected that the real treasure of the shipwreck might be the amethyst that Jirachi turned into, because Jirachi's contest condition before waking up was in the form of amethyst. In the past, the value of such a large piece of amethyst could not be ignored. Maybe the people on the ship took the crystal that Jirachi turned into as a treasure on the ship. Later, although Ash and his party came here, they did not find Jirachi. It might be because Jirachi woke up early, and Jirachi could only wake up for 7 days. During those 7 days, Jirachi might have left this place and then fell asleep again and turned into crystal, so he did not appear in the animation. Maen looked at the current time. It was just afternoon, and it was not yet time for the stars to appear at night. The reason why Lapras could hear Jirachi's call was probably because of Lapras' singing. Jirachi will be attracted by beautiful singing in his sleep, and Lapras' singing is probably the key to calling Lapras over. Putting the crystal in the backpack on his back and putting it together with Molter's Pokemon egg, Maen ate with Pokemon first, planning to take Jirachi outside when night came. Night came quickly, and stars dotted the soaring in the sky in the dark night. Maen also returned to the shore from the seafloor cavern and stopped after finding a human area. Maen held Jirachi's crystal, and Lapras began to sing. As Lapras' singing sounded, the light of the crystal became stronger and stronger, emitting a dazzling light under the night. And Maen could hear Jirachi's voice in the crystal becoming clearer and clearer. Finally, as the white light of the crystal shone, it was suspended in the air at the same time, like the light of evolution normal, which made Maen close his eyes. When Maen opened his eyes again, a Pokemon with its eyes closed appeared in front of him. This Pokemon had the shape of a star normal, and blue ribbons hung at 3 corners. This was also the legendary wish-making Pokemon, Jirachi. Jirachi opened her eyes and looked around curiously, then turned her attention to Maen and Lapras next to her. It still remembered that the human who had been holding her was Maen, and the one who sang was Lapras next to her. "Hello, my name is Jirachi." Jirachi's cute voice sounded in Maen and several Pokemon's minds. Maen knew that this was Jirachi's telepathic ability. Maen also introduced himself and other Pokemon, especially Jengar, who saw the cute Jirachi and thought that there was a new sister joining, and hurriedly took out the energy cubes stored in his stomach and placed all the energy cubes of various attributes in front of Jirachi. Jirachi 453 looked at the energy cube in front of him curiously, then stretched out his white little hand to pick up the steel and psychic-type energy cubes and put them in his mouth. The moment the energy cube entered his mouth, Jirachi's eyes narrowed into a slit, and a happy expression appeared on his face. Jirachi's expression also made Pokemon such as Maen and Jengar smile like grandfathers. After all, Jirachi looked so cute. As for awakening Jirachi, Maen had no special ideas. He just hoped that Jirachi could leave a good memory in the 7 days of awakening. And although Jirachi's ability to make wishes is powerful, it is essentially not able to create something out of nothing. Like in the movie version, Ash and others wished for snacks, although Jirachi brought a lot of snacks, but they were transmitted from vendors in the distance. And in the movie version, Jirachi's power also created Groudon, but that Groudon was essentially just a product of distorted power and did not have Groudon soul at all. This shows that although Jirachi's power is strong, the wishes he made are not created out of nothing, and the consequences of excessive wishes may make the wisher himself unable to bear them. Chapter 84 Jirachi's helped. The next morning, Maen walked on the beach with his backpack on his back, while Jirachi was lying in the backpack behind him, curiously looking at the scenery outside. For Jirachi, who wakes up once every 1,000 years, the scenery is different every time he wakes up, and the 7 days of awakening are the only time he is left to smelling salts, which is the best time for him to observe the outside world. Maen himself did not have any wishes that Jirachi wanted to fulfill, so Maen chose to take Jirachi to see the scenery outside. Professor Oak and Professor Birch arrived the next morning. The two enthusiastic researchers immediately contacted Maen as soon as they arrived on the island, and then went to the location of the Relicanth group with the staff accompanying the Alliance and started to study it. Maen did not reveal Jirachi's existence throughout the whole process. It may be because he saw Maen just after waking up. Although Jirachi was ignorant, he still listened to Maen's words. When the Alliance people arrived, he hid in Maen's backpack and did not show up. Maen knew that although he had no intention of making a wish with Jirachi, it did not mean that others did not. Some people who did not understand Jirachi might really use Jirachi as a tool to fulfill their wishes. The Alliance's top management had actually studied Jirachi a long time ago. With a giant like Alliance, it was impossible for them not to have seen Pokemon like Jirachi. Alliance also knew that Jirachi's ability to fulfill wishes was not as outrageous as the legend said. If Jirachi could really fulfill any wish unconditionally, then Alliance and those villain organizations would have been looking for Jirachi all over the world. Maen also took advantage of Professor Oak and Professor Birch's break to find them alone and ask about Pokemon eggs. Maen, you mean that the Pokemon hatched from this Pokemon egg might be Molters, right? And it's a special form? Professor Oak and Professor Birch carefully observed the Pokemon eggs on the table, their eyes full of curiosity. After all, the black pattern on the egg doesn't look like a fire-type Pokemon, and Maen has no need to deceive them with such things. That proves that the Molters hatched from this Pokemon egg is probably really different. Yes, Professor Oak, and I found that the incubation device does not show the possible hatching time of the Pokemon egg. If the Pokemon egg did not absorb my energy every day, I would doubt whether this Pokemon egg is a dead egg. During the half-month of vacation, Maen has input dark power into the Pokemon egg on time every day, but there has been no sign of hatching so far. You should know that high-level hatching devices will judge the approximate hatching time based on the energy contained in the Pokemon egg and the signs of daily activities. But this Molter's Pokemon egg has not shown any time in half a month, which has become a cause of trouble for Maen. Professor Oak and the others couldn't help rubbing their chins when they heard Maen's words, and said after thinking, since Maen said so, there is only one possibility. The energy required for the Pokemon egg of this legendary beast far exceeds that of normal Pokemon. So the hatching device has not been able to judge the approximate time so far. And I remember that the hatching device can show the time within 60 days, which proves that this Pokemon egg may need more than 60 days to hatch. We too can't judge the specific time. After all, we haven't studied the Pokemon eggs of this legendary beast. Maen heard Professor Oak could only sigh helplessly. After all, this might be the closest to the correct answer. At this time, Jirachi, who was hiding behind Maen, poked his head out of the backpack and looked at the Pokemon egg in Maen's hand curiously. Professor Oak and Professor Birch were so shocked when they saw Jirachi suddenly appear that they almost dropped their jaws and pointed at Jirachi's figure and were speechless. Maen could understand the expressions of the two professors. After all, Pokemon like Jirachi are rarer than legendary beasts. They only appear 7 days in 1,000 years. Even Professor Oak and Odakaku Hiroko have never met Jirachi in person. Jirachi only realized that he seemed to have attracted attention at this time, especially when he saw Professor Oak and the other two's eyes glowing. He was so scared that he hid behind Maen. Two professors, can you control your emotions? Jirachi was scared by you. Maen knew the attraction of researcher Jirachi, but the two looked too evil, like a weird uncle showing goldfish to little Stephanie. Professor Oak and the other two also quickly adjusted their emotions and regained their calmness, and then took out a high-quality energy block to lure Jirachi over. Fortunately, Maen knew the personalities of the two professors, so he told Jirachi that the two professors were not bad people, but a little weird. Professor Oak and Professor Birch did not use any instruments or anything like that, but just touched Jirachi's skin with their hands, and then roughly measured Jirachi's size and weight, as well as his favorite flavors. Jirachi soon escaped from the clutches of the two in their reluctant eyes, and then came to the Pokemon egg in Maen's arms. Jirachi's eyes were closed, and then Maen saw a soft light coming out of Jirachi's body, and 3 blue ribbons also released blue light. And after the light, the white light on Jirachi's body gathered into a line and then injected into Moltres' Pokemon eggs. The hatching device of Moltres also made a sound at this time, and it was clearly displayed that the countdown for the hatching of Pokemon eggs was about 30 days. Maen sleepy. After doing all this, Jirachi's eyelids began to fight, and then slowly floated back to Maen's backpack, closed his eyes, and began to sleep soundly. Maen looked at everything in front of him and didn't know what to say. Jirachi's behavior just now was obviously to transfer his own power to the Pokemon egg. This was different from the way of making a wish. This was more of a gift from Jirachi himself, and there was no consequence to bear. And the only consequence was probably that Jirachi consumed his own energy and needed to rest. Chapter 85, preparing to announce Mega Evolution. Maen looked at Jirachi, sleeping like a baby with his fingers in his mouth in his backpack, and there was some inexplicable emotion on his face. Professor Oak guessed something when he saw Maen's expression and sighed and said to Maen slowly, "Maen, don't think too much. I know what you were thinking, but Jirachi is a Pokemon that can only wake up for 7 days. When it wakes up again 1,000 years later, the world will be different. It may be an unforgettable memory for you, but it may just be a dream for Jirachi." Professor Oak naturally saw Maen's thoughts. Since the establishment of Alliance, it is not that they have not thought about stopping Jirachi's sleep. After all, although Jirachi's ability to fulfill wishes may have side effects, Jirachi's own powerful power is also coveted. Regardless of the purpose, Alliance has tried to stop Jirachi from sleeping, but all failed without exception, so they no longer pursue Jirachi's power. After all, it can only be effective for 7 days, so it is naturally unnecessary. After all, there are many Pokemon with special abilities in this world, and they have fewer restrictions than Jirachi, so there is no need to focus on Jirachi. Maen was a little silent when he heard what Professor Oak 380 said. After all, he also knew how difficult his idea was. However, Maen did not intend to give up. As long as Jirachi was willing, Maen would do his best. Even if he failed, at least he would not leave any regrets. Maen slowly put his backpack on the sofa and then looked at Professor Oak again. "What's wrong, Maen? Is there anything else?" Professor Oak saw Maen's look and knew that Maen still had something to do, so he asked curiously, "Professor Oak, I found a new way of evolution, and I named it Mega Evolution." Maen said this in the surprised eyes of Professor Oak and Professor Birch. That's right, Maen planned to announce the news of Mega Evolution. Maen had considered it when he was in Greentown, and the day before yesterday, Stephen also told Maen that the collection of evolution stones had basically reached a bottleneck. Because of the full collection in the past half month, the actions of Devon Group have been spotted by other companies and Alliance. After all, for a company like Devon, any big move will become a natural target. Devon's acquisition of Evolution Stones naturally attracted the attention of Alliance and other companies. Alliance and other companies don't know what the role of Evolution Stones is, but since Devon values it so much, it means it is definitely profitable, so Evolution Stones are no longer seen on the market. All Evolution Stones are basically not sold, and Alliance and other companies are also asking about the role of Evolution Stones in a roundabout way. After discussing with Maen, Stephen felt that they could close the net. In the past half-month, Devon has collected 20 Evolution Stones at all costs, and Stephen is lucky enough to get the Mega Evolution Stone of Metagross. So many Evolution Stones are completely enough for Maen and Stephen to operate, so Maen and the Queen of the Big Livestock Merchant also intend to seize the greatest benefits from this situation. Maen intends to obtain the identity of Pokemon Researcher by announcing the news of Evolution Stones, and Devon will grab a lot of reputation as the sponsor of Maen's research. Professor Oak and the others were even more surprised when they heard Maen's words than when they saw Jirachi before, because the Pokemon world has developed to the point where all kinds of evolution methods have been studied almost completely, but Maen actually said that there are new evolution methods that can be announced. Maen did not hesitate, and first used the screen of the temporary research base to make a video call to his grandmother Agatha. When the video was connected, the face of his grandmother Agatha appeared on the screen of the base. Seeing Agatha appear, Professor Oak couldn't help but take 2 steps back, hiding awkwardly behind Professor Birch, not daring to look at Agatha on screen. Agatha Elite naturally noticed Professor Oak's look and snorted coldly before saying to Maen, "Maen, stay away from these professors. It will affect your fighting strength. Tell me, what is the matter with me this time?" Professor Birch, "I am the one being blamed." Maen then told about his new evolution method, and the expression on Agatha Elite's face on the screen became serious, especially when Maen also told about his cooperation with Stephen of Devon Group. No wonder Devon Group has been acting so strangely recently. It seems that the evolution method is related to the stones collected by Devon Group. Then show your evolution method now. If there is no problem, then I will help you get a lot of money from Alliance. Agatha Elite instantly understood the connection of the whole thing after hearing Maen's words, and said terrible words, which made Professor Oak and Professor Birch look elsewhere, pretending not to hear. Maen nodded after hearing Agatha's words, because the reason he informed his grandmother was to maximize his interests, which was also the biggest benefit of having a backstage. With the combination of Elite and Devon Group, Maen's status as a researcher this time was almost certain. Jengar, come out, Mega Evolution. Maen took out the keystone hanging around his neck after saying that. Jengar also came out of the shadows after hearing Maen's words and communicated with the Mega Evolution stone in his body. With Maen and Jengar's heart connected, the Mega Evolution was successful smoothly. Facing the new form of Jengar, Professor Oak also forgot that Agatha Elite was beside him and rushed to Jengar with Professor Birch, carefully observing Jengar's appearance. Maen also took the opportunity to talk about the advantages, disadvantages, and methods of Mega Evolution, which made Professor Oak and Professor Birch's eyes shine. Jengar behind Agatha Elite saw that his child had evolved again, and his face was full of surprise, and then his eyes looked at Agatha Elite. Agatha Elite also looked over, and when she saw her own Jengar, she nodded with a grim smile on her face, because Maen showed Jengar's Mega Evolution specifically to give her a hint. If Agatha could get a Jengar Evolution Stone, her own trump card Jengar would probably become a terrible killer, and she could even look forward to the threshold of the champion level. Chapter 86 Alola, Galar region is discovered, so, Maen, you want to become a researcher of Alliance with this new evolution method called Mega Evolution, right? Professor Oak stroked his chin and roughly explained Maen's needs. Maen could only nod gently, not daring to look at the horrible expression of his grandmother Agatha on the screen. Although Maen explained that becoming a researcher was for subsequent development and trainer was Maen's main job, his grandmother Agatha's expression was not good either. Professor Oak, who was sitting opposite Maen, saw Maen's quail-like appearance and couldn't help but smile a little and felt a lot more comfortable. Ahem. It's impossible to become a professor with this mega evolution, but it's possible to become a researcher, but this requires you to submit a research paper on mega evolution. Professor Oak and Professor Birch had no objection to Maen becoming a researcher. All Maen needed was for the two of them to make recommendations on the alliance, which was just a small matter for Professor Oak and Professor Birch. And where there are people, there are rivers and lakes, and Professor Oak and others have seen too much of this kind of interpersonal relationship. The most important thing is that Maen did come up with a way to mega evolve, which does not prevent Professor Oak and the others from helping a little. If Maen just talks about it and doesn't come up with anything, then Professor Oak will definitely not help, even if Agatha is next to him, because this involves his bottom line as a researcher. Research paper? Do you still need this? Maen showed a helpless expression on his face when he heard Professor Oak's words. He didn't expect that he needed a graduation thesis in his previous life, but he still needed to write a thesis in the Pokemon world. The most important thing is that Maen has never written such a thing. Professor Oak saw Maen's expression and just smiled helplessly and said, "That's right, with my and Professor Birch's recommendation, plus your Mega Evolution video, the basic conditions have been met, and you just need to submit the paper and data in the end." This is the first time Professor Oak has experienced Maen's situation. In the past, research was to produce data and papers first and then verify them. Maen's side is the opposite, as if he has already got the answer, and then reverse the process normal from the answer. Maen is really clueless about the paper and intends to ask Professor Oak for help, but Professor Oak and the others decline Maen because they want to study the Relicanth group and are not good at evolution research. Maen, if you want to find someone to help, I recommend you to go to Sinnoh region to find Professor Rowan. He is an authority on Pokemon evolution. With his help and recommendation, it will be easier to get the qualification of researcher. Professor Oak finally recommended Professor Rowan to Maen. Maen looked a little hesitant, and Professor Oak naturally saw his hesitation and continued, "I recommend you to go to Sinnoh not only for this reason, but also because you want to find a way to help Giratina. The Sinnoh region may be the place with the highest probability. You should have heard of the legend of the three gods, and the creator Arceus there. The most important thing is that Alliance may make a big move soon." Big move. Maen was a little confused when he heard Professor Oak's words. Hearing Professor Oak's words, Professor Birch and Agatha Elite on the video showed expressions of sudden enlightenment. They also knew about the big move that Alliance was going to make. Yes, Alliance discovered 2 new regions a week ago. Currently, these 2 regions are named Alola region and Galar region. Maen couldn't help shrinking his pupils when he heard Professor Oak's words. He didn't expect that Alliance had discovered these 2 regions, but Maen didn't hear any news. Professor Oak saw Maen's surprised expression and thought he was surprised by the emergence of the new region. He continued to speak slowly. New regions represent new Pokemon, new ways of evolution, and new research also represents huge benefits. You should understand this. Maen nodded gently, not to mention the Dynamax of Galar region, but the Totem Pokemon of Alola region is a very good research direction, not to mention the unique forms of Pokemon in Alola region, which are all things that contain huge benefits. Alliance intends to reach out to the 2 regions, but encountered obstacles. These 2 regions are already independent regions, and the development of the regions has shown its own characteristics. Regarding the proposal to join the Alliance, the top leaders of the 2 regions have 2 factions, that is, supporters and opponents. But everyone knows that the integration between regions is unstoppable, because for Alliance, Alola and Galar regions have new things, and the same feeling for these 2 regions, and Alliance has more. In the end, the 2 sides set the tone for the exchange. For example, our strong elites and old people are not allowed to go to the new region, and the 2 regions are the same, but also provides a new path for communication. Maen listened to Professor Oak's words, had a hunch in his heart, and looked at Professor Oak excitedly. Professor Oak knew that Maen had guessed the answer when he saw Maen's expression, and he said slowly, "Strengths like the elite have to protect the safety of their home regions, so they set limits on the people they can communicate with, and only allow trainers under the age of 22 to go to the regions for communication. Young trainers are rich in ideas and enthusiasm, and their strength will not affect the balance between regions, and it is also more helpful for the exchange of ideas. Of course, it is impossible for all trainers to be qualified, so the Alliance and the two regions have also made regulations. That is, the young people sent out must be talented. Talent represents the future, and sending young people is not just for communication, but also for showing their future potential. Then the number of young people must be limited. Professor Oak? After all, the characteristic of being talented is not specific. Maen also heard Professor Oak's hidden meaning, and looked at Professor Oak and said with certainty. Chapter 87. Cynthia. Professor Oak nodded after hearing what Maen said, and smiled as he said, "That's right. For example, each region of our alliance can send no more than 4 people. For example, Maen belongs to Kanto region, so the number of people that can be exchanged in Kanto region cannot exceed 4. Since only 4 people can be sent, the characteristic of talent should be to select the 4 most outstanding young people." After hearing what Professor Oak said, Maen also knew why Professor Oak wanted to become a researcher as soon as possible, because a 16-year-old researcher is the perfect embodiment of talent. If Maen cannot be a candidate, then let Kanto hold an internal selection directly. I believe Maen will defeat them. Agatha's sinister voice sounded from the screen, and Professor Oak and others beside him all showed helpless expressions. Maen, you have basically reserved a position in Kanto region. After all, you have left a lot of good impressions in Alliance for the previous Zapdos and SS and incidents. In addition, your current strength is actually enough, but if you have the status of a researcher, it is basically set in stone. Professor Oak's words made Maen understand what he meant. He was determined to get the identity of a researcher, and being able to go to a new region meant new Pokemon. Because Dorimbardo from the Galar region had been coveting it for a long time. Professor Oak knew that Maen was already tempted when he saw his expression, and he coughed twice and said, "If you go to a new region, don't forget to collect new Pokemon and send them over." But Maen, although I'm a little embarrassed, I hope you can choose the Galar region. Why, Professor Oak? Maen was a little confused when he heard Professor Oak's words. Because my cousin is in the Alola region. I can get the information there myself. Professor Oak said this with some embarrassment. After all, he was using a backdoor, but for the sake of research, he could not care less. Wait, Professor Oak, didn't you say that Alola region was just discovered? Maen suddenly remembered Samson Oak in Alola region, who seemed to be Professor Oak's relative, but a black-skinned version. Professor Oak also sighed when he heard this. It turned out that Samson Oak was indeed Professor Oak's relative, but he lost contact 10 years ago. Professor Oak always thought that Samson Oak was dead, but he did not expect that after discovering Alola region a week ago, he found Samson Oak among the exchange personnel of both sides and reunited with his cousin. Maen just twitched his mouth slightly to say that it was really bloody enough, but it didn't matter. After all, Maen's first choice was Galar region. The reason why Professor Oak and Professor Birch helped Maen to become a researcher was not only because they were optimistic about Maen, but also because they had the mentality of using Maen. After all, Kanto region was already crazy because of the 4 places, and Maen, who could lock 80% or even 100% of the places, was very popular. Maen is definitely worth investing in, as long as Maen can send some new Pokemon to them when he goes to Galar region. After all, what these professors like most is the research of Pokemon. After learning the whole thing, Maen went straight to Sinnoh region to find Professor Rowan, and Professor Oak also specifically informed Professor Rowan before Maen left. When Professor Rowan heard that Maen had a new way of evolution, he immediately excitedly asked Maen to come quickly. He would definitely help with the paper, as long as Maen came quickly. Sinnoh region, Sanjim Town, and Palatown are only 1 letter apart, but the development trajectories of the two are so similar. They are both ordinary towns, but they became famous because the laboratories of 2 famous professors were located here. As soon as Maen arrived at Sanjim Town, he saw a pretty figure standing at the gate of the town. A black long skirt set off the person's slender figure. Long golden hair covered one eye, and the fair skin exuded a pearl normal luster in the sun. The person who came was Sinnoh, the future champion of the region Cynthia. Cynthia waved her hand when she saw Maen, motioning Maen to come over. Hello, you must be Maen. My name is Cynthia. Professor Rowan asked me to pick you up. He is already waiting for you in the laboratory. Hello, Cynthia. Sorry to bother you. Let's go. I guess Professor Rowan can't wait any longer. Hearing Maen's words, Cynthia remembered Professor Rowan's anxious look before and couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. Maen was also pleased to see the beautiful woman with a smile, and his mood was much better. After walking into the town, Cynthia looked at Maen, who still had sweat on his head, and suddenly stopped and said to Maen, "Wait for me a moment, Maen. I'm going to buy something to cool you down. You didn't have time to rest after rushing all the way here. Anyway, Professor Rowan doesn't need this little time." Maen was really rushing all the way here. Even with the mobile air conditioners like Jengar, Maen couldn't help but have a few drops of sweat on his head. Song, but I didn't expect Luo to be so careful and actually find this detail. After thanking her, he watched her go to the store next door. 5 minutes, Maen looked at the scorching sun soaring in the sky, and then looked at the store next door. There was still no movement. Maen couldn't help but twitch his mouth. 5.2 Maen remembered that Cynthia seemed to have a serious choice difficulty. Could it be? Maen sighed and walked into the store on the street. As expected, as soon as he entered, Maen saw Cynthia staring at the goods on the counter and kept muttering something. Maen could hear Cynthia was hesitating about which flavor of ice cream to choose. The salesperson in the store immediately looked at Maen for help when he saw him come in. Maen covered his forehead helplessly, then walked over, pointed at the ice cream in the counter, and said to the salesperson, "Take 2 of each of these flavors." The salesperson was relieved when he heard Maen's words and immediately started loading the goods quickly. Chapter 88. Professor Rowan. After leaving the store, Cynthia lowered her head and ate ice cream in silence. The blush could be clearly seen on her fair face. The scene that happened in the store just now made Cynthia feel very shy. She said that she would treat Maen to a meal to cool down the heat, but because of the difficulty in choosing, Maen waited for so long. In the end, it was Maen who helped to solve the problem, and the bill was also paid by Maen. Maen and Cynthia walked side by side. He did not notice Cynthia's blushing face and inner activities. Instead, he walked towards the laboratory with Cynthia in his hand, carrying the bag of ice cream. "Maen, you can't eat so much ice cream. It's okay. I will share it with the staff of the laboratory when the time comes." After a brief conversation, the two fell into silence again. Cynthia's face turned red again, and she felt that she was a complete topic terminator. Maen also felt that the atmosphere was a bit awkward, so he took the initiative to speak. "Cynthia, why did you come pick me up this time? You don't look like a researcher at 230 Sangem Town." With Maen taking the initiative to speak, Cynthia took the opportunity to take over and said, "I am indeed not a researcher at Sangem Town. I came here to study with Professor Rowan. Influenced by my grandmother, I have been interested in Sinnoh history research since I was a child, so I often accompany my grandmother to various laboratories. During this period, I met Professor Rowan and often helped Professor Rowan with his research." Speaking of this, Cynthia felt a little embarrassed and looked at Maen hesitantly and continued, "In fact, I took the initiative to take over your task this time." Maen. "Why?" Maen was a little confused. He didn't think that Cynthia liked him. After all, this was the first time they met. "Because I was beside you when you and Professor Rowan were talking about the new evolution method. So I heard your conversation all the way. I was also very curious about this matter, so I decided to stay and take a look together. I hope you don't mind, Maen." "So that's the case, Kfaf. This is a small matter. After all, this matter is going to be announced anyway. So Cynthia, you don't have to take it to heart. After all, I'm also a trainer. If I encounter such a thing, I am afraid I can't suppress my curiosity, and maybe I need you to help me write a paper. After all, I know nothing about papers." Hearing that Maen didn't take it to heart and even made a joke, Cynthia was relieved and showed a bright smile on her face. The two chatted and laughed all the way to Professor Rowan's laboratory. As soon as he entered the laboratory, Maen In saw a serious-looking old man coming over. This old man was Professor Rowan. Professor Rowan saw Maen and Cynthia and thanked Cynthia for leading the way. Then he greeted Maen and excitedly asked Maen to show the Mega Evolution. Maen looked at Professor Rowan and Cynthia and the expectant eyes of the researchers around him and did not hesitate to call Jengar to perform the Mega Evolution. Seeing Jengar's successful Mega Evolution, Professor Rowan immediately went all out and tested Jengar's data in all aspects with the other researchers. This was also something that was agreed upon before Maen came. When Professor Rowan and the researchers began to study Jengar enthusiastically, Maen did not bother them and found a sofa to sit down. Not long after Maen sat down, he felt a fragrant breeze, and Cynthia also sat next to Maen. Cynthia, aren't you also curious about Mega Evolution? Why don't you go with Professor Rowan to have a look? I am curious, but only at the trainer level, and Professor Rowan and his team are much more professional than me. They are enough, and if I want to understand Mega Evolution, wouldn't it be faster to ask you to discover it? Cynthia said with a smile on her face. Maen couldn't help but smile when he heard Cynthia's words, and then suddenly thought of something and said to Cynthia, Cynthia, can you do me a favor? Help? Just say it, as long as I can do it. I remember you were a scholar studying history. I hope you can take me to MT Coronet. I plan to go to the spear pillar on the top of the mountain to have a look. Spear pillar. Cynthia was a little surprised to hear what Maen said. She didn't expect Maen to ask her for this matter. After all, the location of the spear pillar is hidden, but is not a secret to the top management. But Cynthia was curious about why Maen went to the spear pillar, because there was nothing special there except the legend of Sinnoh. Maen saw Cynthia's puzzled expression and took out his backpack, then slowly opened it, revealing Giratina, who was still sleeping inside. Cynthia was also surprised to see Giratina. As a scholar, she naturally knew Pokemon like Giratina, but she didn't expect Maen to carry it with him. Maen also told Cynthia the story of what happened with Giratina. Cynthia heard that Maen planned to go to the spear pillar to solve Giratina's sleeping problem, and she understood Maen's intention. After all, the Hall of Origin is above the spear pillar. If we can find Arceus, the legendary creator of everything, we may be able to solve Giratina's problem. However, even so, Cynthia was not optimistic about Maen's action this time, because Arceus had not appeared for a long time, and Maen's chance of success was basically zero. Maen looked at Cynthia's eyes and knew what she was thinking. Then he said that he actually knew that he might fail, but failure was better than giving up, even if Giratina fell asleep again. Maen would not regret this action. Looking at the firm expression on Maen's face, Cynthia couldn't look away for a long time, and her mood seemed to be infected by Maen's emotions. She smiled and said, I agreed to your request, Maen, but I hope I can accompany you throughout the whole process. I want to be a witness to your action, whether it is success or failure. Maen was also amazed by the smile on Cynthia's face, and then smiled back. At this moment, Giratina in the backpack suddenly opened his eyes slowly. Chapter 89, the sensation brought by Mega Evolution. As soon as Giratina opened his eyes, he saw Maen, then floated up and approached Maen's face, happily rubbing Maen's face. At the same time, Maen's mind also emerged with Giratina's happy voice and the crisp Maen, Maen. Maen knew what an old father felt like. This cute Giratina completely turned Maen into an old father. Contest condition, eagerly asking Giratina if there was anything wrong with his body. Giratina shook his little head to show that he was fine, and then Maen pulled Giratina over and seriously asked Giratina's wishes. Accompagne Maen, please Maen. I don't want to rest, but I can't rest without it. It will be very tiring. Giratina told Maen in his inner thoughts. Maen, who knew Giratina's thoughts, touched Giratina's head and promised to accompany Giratina, but he was more eager to go to the Pillar of Fame. Cynthia couldn't help but smile when watching the interaction between Maen and Giratina. After all, no one can resist a cute Pokemon like Giratina. The next day, a message released by Professor Oak Laboratory went viral in the Pokemon world. Professor Oak is a treasure in the Pokemon world research community. His reputation is well known throughout the Alliance, and Professor Oak's eyes on Pokemon are the authority among authorities. The authenticity of the video and message he released is naturally beyond doubt. Kanto region trainer Maen discovered a new way of evolution. This way of evolution can make some Pokemon that have evolved to the final form evolve again under certain conditions. The evolved Pokemon will not only change in appearance, but also in strength and ability. Currently, Kanto region Professor Oak, Hoenn region Professor Birch, and Sinnoh's Professor Rowan have jointly certified this evolution method as a new evolution method.
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.